Welcome to Movie of the Year, the only podcast that has the science and the screaming to unequivocally figure out what the best movie is of any given year. I am your host for the evening, Mike Gravano, and this season we're digging into 2001. And this week specifically, we'll be talking about Wes Anderson's The Royal Tenenbaums. With me, as always, competing in a vicious or a monotone, head-to-head, passive-aggressive, decades-old struggle is your champion from last week. Please give it up, and please let me say the right name. Greg.
It was me. I won. You did it. You said it correct. I am here to shake hands and hand out lollipops, and I am all out of handshakes.
Yes, just lollipops, and I don't have to touch anybody. That is the. How's your week been, best friend?
It's been pretty good. I watched the Royal Tenenbaums a whole bunch.
Oh, smart.
Yeah, so got a lot of feelings.
So that was your strategy.
Opinions about that. Yeah, but it's one of those movies that the more I watch it, the less I feel like I have a firm take on it. I'm not sure. It's I don't know. There's a lot of curious things going on in this movie here, Mike. And I ultimately didn't know where I fell on it on the emotional spectrum.
Are you worried you watched it too much? Because maybe you should have watched it just enough to have a firm grasp on it, and now you're going to be on quicksand?
Yeah, maybe I should have just watched it one time and then just been like, yeah, I liked it. It's good.
Well, then you wouldn't get frozen by your confusion.
Yeah, exactly. Well, but that's the problem. I'm thinking myself to death here, man.
We'll see what your competitor's strategy is in a second. Please put your hands together for the returning Grumpalumpagus, Ryan.
Yeah. Let me hear it. You fucking dipshit motherfuckers.
He's the bad guy.
I'm going to come out straight away, gentlemen, and say that it's Tenenbaums, as in I don't understand this movie because I didn't see the first 9 Royal Tenenbaums, and not Tannenbaums like it's some fucking German Christmas tree, okay?
Okay, so it's a completely different word than the word for German Christmas tree?
I think it is.
Okay.
Are we saying it wrong?
But I'm not sure. So I think that we should all be angry and unsure at each other.
That is how I go through life.
I do say Tannenbaum, but it's Tenenbaum.
It's Tenenbaum.
Tenenbaum.
Oh, Tenenbaum. Our home and native. That's a different song. Totally different.
And now Mike is singing, and I'm not going to win this episode. There's no fucking way that I'm going to be able to control myself if Mike is singing and then still get enough points to win this.
Should we do a musical episode?
Where we sing only?
Yeah, where we only sing our opinions.
Sing. I love this idea, and so would the audience. Ryan, Greg has stated that his strategy was watch the movie to the point that he doesn't know how he feels. Uh-huh. What was your strategy coming into this week?
Well, my first thing that I did is I took a knee and I got in touch with all of my feelings before I watched the movie. So those are all there, and they're fucking perfect. And then I watched the movie, and I feel like I understood every single pixel of everything that was happening the entire time.
Interesting. We'll see which of those strategies will take one of you to, in my eyes, both winners, to the finish line, where one of you will actually be the winner. Now, how do we feel? What's your history with the film? How do we feel this is going forward overall, Gregory?
I'm a Wes Anderson. Like, I love the guy's whole catalog. I believe I've seen each of his movies multiple times.
Even Bottle Rocket?
Yeah, Bottle Rocket. Yeah,
because goodness.
It's not even Bottle Rocket. It's even Darjeeling Limited.
Yeah,
that's the question.
I used to own Darjeeling Limited.
Back when Rushmore came out, when you got tired of watching Rushmore, your only option really was to watch Bottle Rocket. So I used to see it a lot back then. But yeah, like I watch Rushmore a ton, and I'm a big fan of the guy, and I'm not like I'm not tired of his shtick, and I don't judge him overly harshly. But this one particular movie, for whatever reason, this one particular time maybe, just really set off like is this bougie white nonsense alarms more than normal.
The answer is always yes. Like,
I know,
absolutely yes.
I know. Like, I'm not saying it's unique to this movie or that it's a unique observation of mine, but for whatever reason, on these viewings, one of the things that really stood in my way was I just kept thinking like, oh my God, this is all just like so removed from. Maybe it's because like 9/11 happens 3 months after this movie comes out.
Because of this movie, maybe?
This movie creates a universe where only very slightly bad things can happen. while the movie is running. Things might happen that are bad before, and things might happen in the future that are bad. But within the movie, it seems like bad things are almost guaranteed to not happen. And that world feels like so...
Interesting for you to belittle suicide attempts.
It's crazy
Ryan?
being on this show for so many seasons, like so many years that we've done. We figured out like what at this point like 5 or 6 movies of their year. But one of the like the through lines throughout all the seasons is like, where's our fucking Wes Anderson? Like, how are we like definitely avoiding Wes Anderson movies? And now we have one. The other through line that has appeared throughout all 5 or 6 seasons of Movie of the Year is, man, iconic movies of the past are just all fucking white. And then we have this like explosion of the two things all in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, we can't get away from like it is the whitest shit ever, not just in the skin color of the people's faces, but also what white people are into. You know, like they might as well have painted mayonnaise on the camera lens of every single one of these scenes. But also, I'm so stoked that we finally get to do a Wes Anderson movie that I really want to talk to you guys about this person who has been a part of our lives for so long, you know? And I think for me, Rushmore is, you know, like should belong on some sort of mountain with 4 heads of characters. I don't know what I would call it, but Royal Tenenbaums is right there. You know, like this is one of my favorite movies of all time.
Mount Rushmore
Is not a segment we'll be doing tonight.
So just for no confusion, that is not a sound you'll hear introducing a segment where we talk.
Ryan brought it up, and I didn't want the listeners to get confused. But Wes Anderson, you were saying, would be on your Mount Rushmore.
Nope.
I didn't listen to what you said at all.
Yeah.
I was looking for the button.
You're trying to press the button, and
Sorry, what I should have said is toilet flush skadoosh. That's the kind of language that you're into. But no, I would like to do whatever due diligence that we have to do, and I'm not playing it off. I think that we do have to do it. Of you know how these movies come across in 2020. But I would also after that, or before that, would really like to talk about what he means to me as a storyteller, and then how he is as a filmmaker.
Yeah, I think we'd be doing
to me, it's very, very important to me.
We'd be doing a disservice if we didn't talk about the white nonsense that Wes Anderson is and gave birth to. But it'd also be doing a disservice to, I guess, us as individuals, but more importantly, him as a director and storyteller. He is very important, and he's doing a lot of things that I understand. I don't think he's fully cancelable yet.
No, I don't think it rises to that. I would never think it rises to that. And I think that he responded after this movie to critiques like this, and that's why I think you have a movie like Grand Budapest Hotel. He's like, okay, yeah, I will bring this to a universe that has literal Nazis breaking down the door, and I will still do it this way, even in a world full of horrors. So it's like, it's a choice he makes to make a world that is sensitive and nice. It's not, and I don't think it's cancelable. I just think you have to kind of talk about it, especially now at a time where the world seems like such a hostile, terrible place.
And then at a certain point, maybe went too far. And went to a Rivers Cuomo level of like, look how much I love Japanese people. It made Isle of Dogs to some sort of potentially creepy level.
Yeah.
As long as he didn't Tim Burton it and say, people of color are just not in my visual aesthetic, so it's not a race thing, it's an art thing.
Why Tim Burton came out in the middle of Edward Scissorhands, looked at the camera, and just straight up said that, I will never know. That's such a weird thing to do.
And kept saying, leave it in. This is the director's
during a Gremlins 2 style review that takes place in the middle of the movie.
That is how we generally, I guess, are feeling about the Royal Tenenbaums. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to dive straight in to Fairytale New York.
Hey guys, thank you so much for listening so far. And let me just tell you that everything ahead of this commercial is much better than what came before it. That's my guarantee. While I have you here, let me tell you about a website. It's called yourpopfilter.com. And it's everything you need that's related to Pop Filter. Everything Mike, everything Ryan, everything Greg, everything Cassie, everything is there at yourpopfilter.com. While you're there, go to yourpopfilter.com/Amazon. Make that your new Amazon bookmark and do your shopping from there. That way, we get a little piece of the action and Amazon doesn't. Make sure you're also listening to everything that Pop Filter has to offer, which includes the Superhero Show, a podcast that covers every single TV show that's based on a comic book or comic book property, and Movie of the Year. where we sit down and try and figure out what is the single greatest movie of any given year. That's Superhero Show. That's Movie of the Year. And that's yourpopfilter.com. Rate, subscribe, review. Bye!
In 2001, Wes Anderson had the unenviable task of following up Rushmore, the greatest movie of all time. Using J.D. Salinger, Orson Welles, and his own parents' divorce as influences, Anderson co-wrote and directed the Royal Tenenbaums. The success of his first two movies allowed him to create an all-star ensemble, including Gene Hackman, Angelica Houston, Danny Glover, Ben Stiller, Gwyneth Paltrow, Bill Murray, Kumar Palana, and not Jason Schwartzman. The movie was a mild success with critics and audiences, many of whom at the time said that he didn't mature enough after his first two movies. Most people now say that that is bullshit. It was also nominated for upwards of one Academy Award, including Best Original Screenplay. The movie tells the story of a family coming back to the house they grew up in to spend time with their estranged father as he dies or does not. Taste buds, I ask you this. As we've already talked about, Anderson's films are not unfamiliar with critiques of twee whiteness, and the Royal Tenenbaums is no different. Focusing on the patriarch himself in 2020, does it seem like Anderson's using Royal to say something of bougie white nonsense, or is it just there without commentary?
My first thought, before I guess I started watching it, was like, oh, man, Gene Hackman calls Danny Glover Coltrane at some point, and this is going to be rough.
And a grizzly bear, and a big buck.
An old grizzly bear, and that's not, like, if Etheline's suitor was white, I don't think he would have said that stuff, but...
Well,
now,
he also says if you want to talk jive, we can talk jive.
Yeah.
I could talk jive all day. But now I sort of think that it's an achievement because nothing's really changed since then. Royal is just as hateable as all of the people that are now his age today in 2020. But I guess offers us more of like an opening understanding of, are there ways that we can talk to this person, or are they just truly awful?
What's so weird about him is that he very clearly employs racism more than like experiences it as like a worldview. It's like when he wants to attack Henry, he uses racism, and I feel like it being like a tactic is even more disgusting than just this natural predisposition towards it. It's like the one way I'm going to make this guy feel uncomfortable is I'm going to constantly allude to his race in kind of dog whistly ways. So like, obviously I am calling you an animal. Obviously I am bringing up that you're black, but not like using very derogatory language. So then it's also kind of like gaslighting in a way.
Yeah. In the commentary, I guess the line was, instead of Coltrane, it was Satchmo. And Danny Glover was like, I don't like that. And Wes Anderson's like, well, what should we do? Coltrane? And Danny Glover said it should be Coltrane. And Wes Anderson was like, oh, what does that mean? Danny Glover's like, I don't know. But it sounds like bad, right? And we know why it's bad, to just say like, oh,
to call a black man a different black man's name on purpose.
That is. You could do that with really any, race or gender or whatever. Just like, oh, you're there. But just the fact that like he's not even good at it, and he's just trying to get a rise. He is a racist, but
Yeah, like Greg said, it's not like built in. It's not deep seated. He uses it tactically to undermine people, and that's fucked up in such a different way than, well, my parents raised me this way and I didn't realize blah blah blah. Like his best buddy is Pagoda. Is that his name?
But
Pagoda,
Pagoda, but it's his best buddy. But it's also like he made sure to have a POC as a right hand person,
Yeah.
And doesn't.
And it's not his best buddy so much as his like valet. Like
right.
Yeah.
And I think if you move beyond Royal, there are still uncomfortable racial dimensions to the movie, and one of them is the fact that like so often other usually indigenous peoples of the world are used as like just backdrop. Like literally in the background of a lot of scenes, like on the walls and stuff, there are tribal masks. And clearly Margot has like a fascination with Africa, but it doesn't feel like a fully like realized like three-dimensional experience. It feels like a aesthetic. And
that one I have less of a problem with than like Eli Cash, who is just basically cashing in on the stuff that he knows that he's not well, like he doesn't get good reviews. He just knows that people like his books. And I have to imagine that that's because people are into the disgusting bullshit that is probably in those books.
Yeah,
he's totally Cormac McCarthy, right?
Yeah,
He makes Custer out to be a hero.
I think that's like, here's the defense as, again, like a white dude defending Wes Anderson, but I think Eli Cash is a shittier Cormac McCarthy, or maybe just what Wes Anderson thinks about Cormac McCarthy. And so that's part of the joke, is he is the cowboy. So he is purposefully, like, he has all the Native American imagery around because he's just using that as part of his image. But I also think it's the takedown of this kind of white liberal, upper West Side white liberal, is the mom's an archaeologist. Margot went to Africa. It is all these white folks who go and say, see how worldly I am. I've been there. I know those people.
They're so often like just thumbing through an atlas. Like every kid is shown at one point just like kind of casually looking through an atlas.
I mean, Margot married a Jamaican dude for 6 days, probably just to have that on her resume, you know? It's like she went there, they barely knew each other, and then now I can say, look how worldly I am.
Can anybody fault a 19-year-old and who they marry at that time? If 19-year-olds didn't make poor marriage decisions, I literally wouldn't exist.
Honestly, I was swimming and he canoed out to me does sound like a reason why a 19-year-old should get married.
Yeah.
That's what your body's telling you at that time.
Aside from just the racism, though, like, I do think Royal is an incredibly interesting character, because I think, like, it's just a mark on what Wes Anderson is capable of doing, because the shit that comes out of this guy's mouth is borderline villainous. Like, he's essentially Dr. Doom in a Wes Anderson movie. And not just because Doom is a villain, but because, like, his ego...
The fist shaking of it all.
Yeah, exactly. It makes him say insane things.
And he loves like the cleverness of it. He loves the play of it. He reminds me of a like a good-natured Iago. Like, he likes that it's a game. He likes to do it. You know, he likes to do all the little steps.
But it's all second nature. One of my favorite lines in the movie is it's towards the beginning, and he's telling Ben Stiller that he wants to meet his grandkids. And what he means to say is, I want to meet my grandkids finally. You know, like, it's been too long. But what he does say is, I finally want to meet my grandkids. Yeah. I'm finally at a place in my life where I would like to meet him or meet them. And that's Royal right there, you know?
I guess this is growing up.
Is he actually redeemed at the end? And is the movie really trying to do that?
I think that's a really tough question. I think that the whole movie is.
Would you say it's a really good question, Ryan?
No, I wouldn't say it's good. I would say that I asked probably better questions. I would say that it's an okay question, because the movie has a hard time finding, and not necessarily in a bad way, but like, it has a complex relationship with figuring out how long do we hold grudges with these truly terrible fucking people. Mm-hmm. And at what point do we say, you know what? We're not looking for perfect. We're looking for just slightly better than they actually are. And I think that's the realization that Chaz eventually comes to.
Is he better, or did he just learn it? Like, he is charismatic no matter what version of it is.
That's an interesting thing that the movie does, because the movie kind of pretends like there is, if you blink, you miss it. But the movie kind of pretends like there's some big scene where he has like a come to Jesus moment. But he doesn't actually have that scene. It's just like the movie. The only thing he does is he decides he's going to get an actual job. And he's going to working at the elevator, like him being outed and then getting the job as the elevator attendant, I think is supposed to be the turn. And then the movie just treats that as if it's like a huge, big, dramatic shift that he makes. And as the viewer, I think you get caught up in it, and you just get swept along.
That happens in other movies.
Yeah.
Watching the commentary, if you watch the commentary, Wes Anderson is watching the movie and he's saying, I am just realizing now I did not explain how he got that job or why. Yeah. He did not know it until he sat down and watched it. But
that's the pivot of the entire the entire emotional landscape of the movie pivots kind of almost off screen.
But I think Mike, I do think that you're right when you say that, like, other movies do it, and the way that they do it, the way that this movie does a lot of things that we can get into is clothes. And the entire time Royal is wearing this suit that nobody would wear unless you're like a child thinking about what an adult wears, right? Like, this speaks to the whole like storybook thing of it. Like, yeah, and he's also he's a child.
He's a 13-year-old in like a 70-year-old's body.
Even more than any other child that we see, he is a child. And so when he's in that suit, that like very like what's Annie's dad's
Daddy
name,
Warbucks?
Daddy Warbucks, that would wear. Now he's wearing it in the real world, and we're like, oh, this person's a fucking asshole. But through the back third of the movie, when he is wearing the elevator attendant suit, that sort of does change everything. Like at the end of the movie, he goes to get Ari and Uzi to go to the cemetery. He's like, who wants to grab some burgers and hit the cemetery?
Is it dumb to say that for a character who could not deal with the fact that life has ups and downs, when he becomes an elevator attendant, that's him admitting? And I know it's really shallow, but I honestly do think there's supposed to be something there about the fact that he's embracing that being part of a family comes with the parts that are really tough too, not just the parts that are really fun.
No, I do think that is dumb. But then when we see him, as the elevator attendant and in the suit at Helen's gravesite alone, Ari and Uzi were not allowed to come. That like we start to feel for this person that we know to be racist and we know to be an egomaniacal asshole. You know, we just want these people to be broken down.
But like, even so, he's broken down a little. But like, I guess what does he actually learn? Because he's still the same dude. Like, getting that Dalmatian the day Buckley dies isn't real learning.
He learns nothing. He teaches his children, like, without actually doing anything, that you gotta like forgive and forget a little bit. You know,
I think
like,
also he learns to give people what they need and not necessarily like what they want or what he thinks that they should want.
His attitude when he gets off that bus and tells Etheline when she's with Danny Glover, I brought you the divorce papers. Like, he is jovial and like that really is a thing, because
being found out was a good thing for him. Being found out freed him. Like,
right. And so now he knows that, like, I'm getting a divorce with you. I'm signing the papers. Like, fuck you, dude. We don't believe you. Oh, what I actually have to do is bring the papers, put them in your hand, and prove to you that I'm doing this. Bring a notary public. Yeah, and bring somebody who can do that.
Also, it's so interesting that really, when you look at the entire movie, he is dying. He's dying the entire time we see the movie. His heart is failing the entire time we see. He dies barely before, like, the movie is just about to end before he actually dies. So, like, in a weird way, the universe redeems his lie.
Yeah, that's a fable. That's like a storybook thing. It's almost like he's a ghost that has to go back to Earth to like solve all his problems before he goes to heaven. Did you guys think
of Ron? Did you think of like he's a reverse Lear? Right. Because he's like a Lear who's putting, rather than dividing his family, he's putting his family back together at the end of his life.
If I can keep them separated, then I will stay in power forever. And then all of a sudden, I've hit this age where I realize that bringing them together, they don't need me anymore. And that's the thing. That's like the generational gap is. That's what we're, dealing with baby boomers right now, is like they're all flailing trying to keep power, but they can go to heaven or whatever storybook thing you want to believe in when they just say, actually, you know what? I'm going to bring everybody together. And then when I'm not needed anymore, then I can move on.
What do you think the connection between Royal and Richie means?
I think that one's more fucked up. I think that one's just like Richie is gonna make me the most money, and B is the one that accepts me. There's no way that Chaz and Margot, as children or adults, are going to like let him in, and Richie is just so kind-hearted or stupid that, and I think that Royal is the kind of guy who targets in on this immediately.
Yeah, they're all pretty stupid though. Richie at least knows that he like buys Royal shit hook, line, and sinker. But honestly, Chaz thinks he doesn't. And then the second he's like, get out of here, Dad. And then Gene Hackman just falls over. Royal just falls over. He's like, oh, my God, are you okay? Like, none of you people understand the depths to which this guy will go. And that makes you always fall for him.
But believe it or not, even with Richie and Margot hooking up, there's not a lot of sibling time together. And so what it seems like is that the siblings have to come closer to the parents, or the parents have to come closer together. But really what it is the siblings finding the middle ground, and when Chaz realizes that he should be a little bit more like Richie, and Richie should probably not wear his heart on his shoulders or his wrists as much as he does, that's when everything is okay, When Richie
when he stops hiding behind his sunglasses and his long hair.
Right. And then just cuts it back into handsome Luke Wilson. God damn it, guys.
Chiseled. Whew, it's like Luke he's Wilson. Carving himself out of fucking stone in that scene.
Do you guys? We all have beards. Every time you guys shave your beards, you just hope that Luke Wilson's underneath there.
Yeah, just a stronger jawline than I've ever had before.
It's it's not just strong. His jawline like juts out away from his face.
Yeah.
I've never seen anything like that.
He could be Batman.
Also, bright blue
shit.
eyes in the meantime.
He's the Batman. Means nothing. Go figure out what we're talking about. Go to yourpopfilter.com/Patreon. Nope, flip that, patreon.com/yourpopfilter and listen to why we say Luke Wilson should be Batman. We have to take a break. And when we come back, let's look at the entire career of one Ben Stiller. Hola, Filterinos. I just wanted to interrupt real briefly and say thank you for listening. Thank you for your support. If you want to support us a little more directly, you can go to patreon.com/yourpopfilter. There, depending on what tier you pick, $1 a month, $5 a month. If you're crazy, anything more than $5 a month, don't do that. You can get extra content. There's extra shows, extra series, behind-the-scenes stuff. You could pay for Ryan to draw you a picture. I can write you a poem. You can get the shirts off our very own backs. All of that and so much more over at patreon.com/yourpopfilter. While you're on the internet, you should check out Shady Monk. He does all the tunes you've been listening to. He's on Bandcamp. He's on Spotify, SoundCloud, wherever kids get their music these days that I'm too old to know. Shady Monk lives there. You can probably follow him on Twitter and Instagram as well. That's Shady Monk. Wherever you get music, check him out. Taste buds, from time to time, when we have an actor with a widespread career who's meant a lot to us, we like to look back and ask ourselves, how did they get here? This is not Ben Stiller's beautiful house. This is not Ben Stiller's beautiful wife. This is Ben Stiller's beautiful career retrospective. So what we'll be doing is going through era by era, listing all of his film roles, and the two of you will be creating the ultimate
Hoagie.
the Royal Hoagie, a.k.a. the Mount Rushmore of Ben Stiller's career. Understand?
Yes, absolutely.
So, let's start with era number 1. We are skipping his bit roles in movies like Empire of the Sun. We are laying
do you remember that time, though?
Ah.
When Steven Spielberg was like, Ben Stiller, run over there. Say, I'm in Empire of the Sun.
How old was he?
47.
2047. He was very ancient.
He's a Blade Runner.
He was one of those Blade Runners. So right now we are laying the alt-comedy groundwork from 1992 to 1996. His big... Normally we don't talk about TV, but when you have a television show named after yourself, it probably should be mentioned. So in this era, we have The Ben Stiller Show, Reality Bites, Heavyweights, Happy Gilmore, Flirting with Disaster, and The Cable Guy.
Okay, so Cable Guy was a movie that he wrote?
Yes.
What does he do in The Cable Guy?
I think he has a bit role in it.
Oh, okay.
He's the guy being accosted by the cable guy, right?
No, that's Matthew Broderick.
Oh yeah.
They're very similar.
Is he another cable guy, like a different competing cable guy?
He might be a competing cable guy.
Is
he
he
just
the
wants
guy
to give Broderick cable.
Is he the guy who can't get Pepsi or can't get silverware at medieval times?
He directed it.
Oh, he directed the movie.
Yeah.
Does that usually is it set that you have like a big role if you direct it? Like,
Yeah, you should also be the star. You should be the cable and the guy.
Was this movie way ahead of its time, or was it just like a tone that no time would embrace?
I love the Cable Guy. I think it's awesome. It gave us Ben Stiller. It gave us Judd Apatow. It gave us Matthew Broderick. I'd never seen Ferris Bueller. It gave us Jim Carrey. I'd never seen Ace Ventura, The Mask, or Dumb and Dumber. But I don't know how to put him on the Rushmore because of this movie. Can we talk about Flirting with Disaster for a second?
I would love you to talk about the thing you think we can talk about instead of talking about the thing you think we can't talk about.
Cool. I know when you say that you love what I'm doing, it typically means you hate what I was just doing, and I appreciate that.
I love when you start doing something different.
Flirting with Disaster, I think that this was something that he did not have a lot of involvement with the writing or directing. This was Mike's favorite director, David O. Russell, director of Silver Linings Playbook. And I think this was him showing off that he is a pretty good actor and pretty good at taking the script and doing his own thing. Do we even think that anymore? Or when we just hear his name, are we just thinking he's going to do that thing where he's like,
yeah,
Gaylord
hunched
Fokker
over
everywhere.
and yelling.
There's a couple versions of Ben Stiller, so that is his go-to one. I think his quintessential is Heavyweights. Heavyweights imprinted the one kind of Ben Stiller we all often think about.
And I think, Greg, that we were probably born too early, but with people that were born after us, Heavyweights is a big deal. Did you know that, Greg? Did you know that the stock on Heavyweights is just skyrocketing?
I guess I've like heard people talk about it, but I never saw it myself. Is this a movie about fat kids?
Yeah, they go to fat kid camp. I believe Paul Feig is the camp counselor, who's nice. He's a nice camp counselor. The fat kids go there and love it. And then Ben Stiller, who's basically playing his role from Happy Gilmore, his role from Dodgeball. He has the goatee, and he takes over. And
it's just facial hair, right? Like if Ben Stiller has facial hair, he's going to act like this.
Yeah, but he has the very specific douchebag. We all have facial hair, and nobody would expect us to act like Ben Stiller when he has facial hair, because he always has the specific kind of mustache or goatee that makes you assume he'll abuse old people or chubby kids. Do any of these in his first era, do you guys think belongs on the Ben Stiller Rushmore?
I mean, honestly, for me personally, the like Happy Gilmore old like nursing home attendant, like I know it's a small role, but that is seriously like if you say Ben Stiller, that's probably the first thing I'm going to think of. And I heard recently that doing that scene took forever because he and everybody else could not stop laughing.
Yeah, I will say that in my marriage, which I have to assume is like most people's marriage, if either one of us says, hey, can you get me blank? We will respond with, I'll get you a warm glass of shut the hell up.
See, that's why I love you and your wife, because most people think about the scene and just say Mista Mista, which is not that funny.
Hey, that Mista Mista lady, I think she's dead.
I just killed her. But
So-
real, I do want to talk about Michael Grates from Reality Bites. That's a different type of Ben Stiller character. I don't know if he's going to make the Rushmore, but that like he was playing against Ethan Hawke. Ethan Hawke was like the Gen X. I don't fucking give a shit, bro.
Who cares?
And he was like,
I'm disaffected.
yeah, like it doesn't even matter. I listen to Pearl Jam while I'm listening to Green Day. All right, so and
That's
Ben
gonna sound like
Stiller,
shit, honestly.
Ben Stiller was the guy in the suit saying, "Well, you know, I know why the caged bird sings. It's because it's caged." That's his style of comedy.
Because he says it.
And
Like that?
I think the straight man, the straight white dude, is part of Ben Stiller's whole like stardom.
Yeah, that whole like simmering anger thing. I think it's really like he and Adam Sandler both do that of just like, yeah, we know middling white men are angry about everything. We get it. It's very cute.
And they both like everybody came to play at the same time. Where like Owen Wilson, Vince Vaughn, Will Ferrell, and John C. Reilly were like, oh, right when we get to that point where we're about to simmer and explode, we're just going to become like we're going to lower our IQs by 100.
Mm-hmm.
And Ben Stiller tried to hang in there and be like, no,
He wants
Yeah.
to make that sound.
And he does try to, good collection of dudes trying to do the same thing. And he is the one who's like, what if it's a real person the whole time? Unless he's the cartoon with the facial hair. But when he's not the facial hair Ben Stiller, he is trying to lampoon the real person.
Yeah, I'm talking about clean-shaven Ben Stiller, which I guess is trying to explain the plight of the white man, which, saying it now, thinking about it now, does fucking, it is weird, but...
Yeah, fuck this whole segment. We're out. So, before we move on to the next era, who, if anybody, belongs on Ben Stiller's Mount Rushmore from this era?
I feel like Heavyweights is a big deal. I feel like Tony Perkis is a big deal.
I agree, because I am of the age that you spoke of.
Let's go for it. Let's do it, you guys.
I love it.
He'll keep the mountain trim, too, which I like. Little extra granite on
So
some
it
of
sounds
the
like you
midsections.
agreed on that one. So I will say, because there's 1,000 eras of Ben Stiller, this is not like your daddy's Rushmore.
Whoa.
We're taking presidents on and off
Oh, okay.
throughout. So
Should we take the ones who own slaves off, then?
yeah, no Ben Stiller character who owns slaves will ever be on this mountain. I'm
There's
putting
no
that
way
out
that
there.
Tony Perkis from Heavyweights didn't own slaves.
Well,
There's
yeah,
no
he
fucking
just said
way.
they're work at my camp, quote unquote. Era number 2 is from 1998 to 1999. Short era, but so much happens. This is Big Time Can't Change Ben. We have Zero Effect, Something About Mary, Your Friends and Neighbors, Permanent Midnight, The Suburbans, Mystery Men, and Black and White. And as I
This
read
was
that,
a big era for me.
Dang.
there's a lot of shit I've never heard of in this era.
Like, have you heard of Permanent Midnight?
I've heard of that one.
I've seen it.
Never
It's
seen
about the guy that like was addicted to heroin and did the like. It was about the creator of Alf, right, Ryan?
Or just a writer on the show,
Yeah.
but he gets so high on heroin, but they can't use Alf, so he gets high on heroin and punches a green Alf-like monster to death while high on heroin. Who doesn't want to see that? Big ones for me. I think that Zero Effect is an amazing movie. This is him and Bill Pullman as like detectives. I think that this is part of why I fell in love with Ben Stiller, but I don't know if it's Rushmore worthy.
And it's your love of like fucked up detectives. Zero Effect feels like a proto The Nice Guys.
Yeah, I do love fucked up detectives, but we have to talk about Ted. There's something about Ted where I think that now Ben Stiller is a household name.
Yeah, this put him on the map. I was surprised going through this that it wasn't just huge hits after this. It took a while. People were like, that guy. But I think a lot of people would roll their eyes if you said Ben Stiller's alt comedy. But look at his career. He's a fucking weirdo. And it's weird that he's made it as big. Yeah.
That was a deeply weird comedy that nobody accepted.
Or liked. Or wanted to talk about.
Or watched.
But like, he invented Zoolander a decade before the movie. He likes weird shit, and it took a while for alt comedy to hit mainstream, and people really like him.
Or yeah, like he likes to take normal shit and like put that Ben Stiller twist on it, you know. And I wonder if there's something about Mary does have that Ben Stiller twist with Ted. If this movie was made 5 years before this, then Matt Dillon would be Ted instead of like the giant toothed detective or PI, and would do nothing. You know, like he would add nothing to it. You know, like at this point, Ben Stiller was just cast and like, yeah, this is any white dude could play this role. And I wonder, it's been a while since I've seen it, but I wonder if he did bring a lot to the role of Ted.
I think so. I think he provides a really good center because what that movie starts doing without you realizing it for a while is getting more and more absurd, almost like supernaturally. So the whole world starts to kind of like logically break down in that movie. And I think that he plays the straight man so effectively that it keeps us anchored to that like sort of central position. It feels like a pretty normal comedy at first, and it is like not in any way.
He also brought Going Method, where they wanted to use special effects, and he went, no, I really will zip my nads.
These are my nuts. Nards. And I think tip right up in there.
A little tip right up in there. Does this might be, I don't know if it's generational divide or this movie is truly looked down upon. What's Mystery Men do for you guys?
Oh, Mike, did you come to the two right people? Greg, is our friendship based on Mystery Men?
Yeah, we were really excited to see this movie, and I've only seen it the one time, and I still think of some elements of it. Like, I mean, I could still see like Janine Garofalo bowling her dad's bowling ball head, and then of course, like the last line of the movie is like it's a bad movie, but the last line is very funny, which is we're the Mystery Men, we're number one, everyone else is number two or lower. There's how many toggle throws in Toto?
Oh, yeah. How many in Toto? Like, I've never stopped saying the word Toto since then.
I had not heard that word before that movie, and now I've said it every day since then.
I thought the movie invented that, instead of saying total, cut
Toto?
off a letter and say Toto. And like his character was Mr. Furious, and so like when everybody was using their superpowers, he would take forks and like scratch the top of a limo, but be very mad about it. His most Ben Stiller part in the entire movie was where the like Native American leader of the team would say things like, if you cannot control your anger, then your anger controls you. And halfway through him saying something like that, if you cannot control your anger, Ben Stiller screaming, what? Does your anger control you? Is that what you were about to say? Yeah, that's probably what you were about to say.
Do you mean Hank Azaria?
The Blue Raj?
Hank Azaria had the forks as his weapons, but Ben Stiller grabbed a couple. And
I was thinking of the Blue Raj the other day.
You said the Native American leader.
No, it's a different character. It's a different guy. The leader of the group. No, it's different. Yeah, don't do that. Don't go there. But I was thinking of the Blue Raj just the other day, Ryan. I was like taking the forks out of the washing machine, and I was like imagining whipping them at people. What is so sad about that movie is there's probably 3 scenes, and they're the ones that we've laid out, where you can see what the movie's potential was and what we thought it was going to be going into it. But honestly, there's so many times where it felt like they flipped on the cameras and they were like, save us. And it didn't work.
Do you guys remember the legacy that this movie has left? They decide that they have to form a team. They have to get a superhero team, so they hold auditions, including Dane Cook and with the Waffler. And when that scene starts, do you remember what we hear?
All-Star, right?
Tweet, tweet, tweet.
Yeah, everybody always says about Shrek too, and they forget
It's not Shrek.
It's not Shrek.
Y'all forgot about Mystery Men. So I got to ask, guys, I would love to talk about Mystery Men all day with you.
I mean, this
From
is a movie
era,
podcast.
Does it, who's going up here? Zero Effect, Something About Mary, Friends and Neighbors,
There's Something About
Midnight,
Mary.
Suburbans. Okay.
I think it's Ted for sure.
Ted, yeah.
And I would like to put Mr. Furious on, but
No.
no. I'm being told no.
No, I won't allow it.
I want to allow it for now because he can get knocked off. So for Ryan supporting his heart, Mr. Furious and Ted will be up there for now. We have one more era before we have to stop. From 2002 to 2004, Ben Stiller's Superstar, Part 1. We have Keeping the Faith, Meet the Parents, Zoolander, The Royal Tenenbaums, Duplex, Along Came Polly, and Starsky and Hutch.
Starsky and Hutch, I remember being so excited. I thought, oh, this is going to continue this run of these actors being in awesome movies. And Starsky and Hutch, I think, was the ruination, right? It was like, oh, not only is this movie not funny, but comedies aren't funny at all. I don't like any movies anymore.
Yeah.
We should stop remaking things. We should stop making things.
But meet the parents.
Yeah,
I've
it
got
sort of
nipples,
doesn't matter
Greg.
where you fall on that. Like Greg Fokker is. I mean, we got to put him on the mountain, right?
Do you remember though? That is one of those movies that has. I think that there's like a little brother in character in that movie, and he's a weirdo. And the reason he's weird is because he's gay.
I think that's
old
Wedding
school.
Crashers.
Oh, okay.
No, that's you're right.
This is a family of movies.
That's
Wedding Crashers, I believe.
In this era, we have Greg Fokker. We have two Greg Fokkers and a Chaz Tannenbaum and a Derek Zoolander. Those are three heavy hitters.
Heavy hitters. Only one Greg Fokker so far, but yes. So who are you set? Do those?
It's got to be Zoolander, right? Like, are we supposed to pick one person out of this era,
No.
or can we have two?
You can have two.
Does anybody actually care about Greg Fokker?
Oh,
Heinlein?
He seems nice. Because I'm thinking it should be Chaz and.
well, you each get one per era. Let's
Okay.
say that. So, Greg, who's your one for this era?
Chaz.
No, that's bullshit.
Oh.
No, there's three from this era. Cut
You're
somebody
saying
else.
there's three from this
Cut
era.
fucking heavyweights, dude.
So, yeah, who's on the mountain currently?
I've got heavyweight, Ted from Something About Mary, Mr. Furious from Mystery Men. I don't know
Take
who's
him
going
off.
to get
Take
cut.
him off.
Greg Fokker, Zoolander, and Chaz.
All right. So, yes, we're going to cut heavyweights and cut.
You should cut Mr. Furious. Nobody gives a shit about Mr. Furious.
We got to cut two.
I was still talking. It's
Oh,
crazy.
sorry.
I was like,
Continue.
and cut.
Keep going.
Mr. Furious.
Mr. Furious, right? Yeah, that's what I was saying. Good one, Mike.
Okay, so just so I'm clear, Mike cut Mr. Furious twice,
Yeah.
and Greg interrupted the whole time.
Yeah. That is what happened. So your current mountain of Ben Stiller iconic roles is, Ryan?
It's Ted from Something About Mary, Chaz from Royal Tenenbaums, Gaylord Fokker from Meet the Parents, and Zoolander from I can't remember.
That is our intermission of Ben Stiller's career retrospective. We're going to go back.
Wait,
to
Mike,
talk
before
about
you
the
go,
Royal
before you send it away, Mike, do you think that there's anybody who's going to take a seat from those four?
I do.
Really?
Yes.
Those are four biggies.
Is it
There are
Walter
four
Mitty?
hugies. What?
Is it going to be Walter Mitty?
What was the porn version of The Secret Life of Walter Mitty?
When we come back, more The Royal Tenenbaums.
Titty. Well, that is very, very funny. Or very sad. And perhaps now you have something to think about. Or very problematic. And perhaps we have something to think about. But in any event, I'm sure you have some reaction to what you're listening to. So why not check us out on the social media? You can go to Instagram or Twitter and find us at YourPopFilter. Email contacts@YourPopFilter. Hey, everybody. Keep watching them movies.
Taste buds. Except for brief lines and glimpses of her plays, we hardly hear what's going on inside of Margot. Is this a failure of the movies or failure of the viewers in not understanding what Margot's all about?
I read that Luke Wilson was upset the entire time of filming because Richie was just not getting enough screen time. And Ben Stiller Chaz goes away for like 45 minutes of the movie.
Really?
Yeah, I think he his boys come into play a lot more in this chunk.
Yeah, but
he's
there's a
just
whole
not
time
there.
where he's like apart from them.
And then he walks out and he closes a window, and like that's sort of all he does until he delivers his final line of the movie, which I hope that we get a chance to talk about at some point. But as far as your question, Mike, goes, I think that this is an ensemble, and I think that Margot has a ton of time. I feel like I know Margot really, really well.
Is it too woke for broke? Then saying it's because she's a girl. We don't know a lot about her. Is it? So I'm saying, is it the viewer's fault? Because I gave two options there, and you're saying the question's bunk. I'm saying you're bunk.
I feel like there is the temptation to say that she's a thin character and then chalk it up to the fact that she's one of like two female characters in the entire movie. But I think that it is valid, I think, to say, like, let's look at how the other kids, how much like screen time they get. And they don't get a ton. And I also do think there is supposed to be another idea with Margot, which is that she presents herself in the plays that she writes. And so like Mishima style, it might be that the best way to understand her is to approach her through her art and not through like actual like talking to her. But I do, even at the end of all of that, I still feel a little troubled. And I feel like because at times she is, and maybe it's just her personality and so it's valid, it feels like she's just supposed to be kind of a dream girl for so much of it.
Well, I guess... I think we know the most about Chaz because he is vocal. The most. Like, he'll let everybody know how he's feeling. And then Richie, he gets a couple monologues.
He's kind of like the star of the family. And so I think that he kind of gets a little bit more time in the movie. But he's the oldest son. And for better or worse, that's how a lot of families function.
Which
Richie?
Person?
Richie is the oldest son. So, like... That's always kind of like the star of the family, right? And then he's like the athlete, and he's the one who's like, you know, has I think the most enduring fame because they all start off as famous little kids.
I'm gonna
go Ryan.
Go ahead. I'm gonna say that Margot is part of an ensemble, and then I just sort of want to talk about like why she is so impactful to me in my life, and it's not just because I saw this at a time where I was super into the makeup that she's wearing or the fact that she's always a zebra. But instead, because the fact that she was adopted is such a big deal in the movie, and like how she is dealing with everything, I think it's always there. She, as a character, is sort of plain, right? Like she's sort of the action hero, sort of the I go where I want to go person. Mm-hmm. And to watch her break down, and there's a couple of scenes where that happens. I want to point out where she says Etheline tells her daughter that Chaz is moving back in. This very renowned artist who is married says, "Oh, Chaz is moving back in." And she says, "Like, well, why does he get to do that?
No fair."
Well, anybody could do that forever. And then, like, that sort of says, like, oh, you sort of always wanted to do that and you never could. And I want to talk about how she was not taken on all of these adventures, which I think is, although she's not on those adventures, that is character building. And then it's the ice cream scene. Like, at the very end of the movie, Royal takes her to get ice cream in a very famous scene because it's a scene where the whole ice cream restaurant is filled with single dads and their daughters trying to get their relationship back together through ice cream. And it's a big deal for Royal because...
I love how he's like, get something. She's like, I don't want anything. And he's like, come on, get something. She's like, okay. Butterscotch sundae.
Yeah, she already has an order on hand.
And it's the sweetest thing you can get.
Before she says, "Oh, I don't want anything, I'm leaving in 5 minutes," his look of dejection is that, I mean, that does sum up Royal. Like, he is awful, but I do sort of love him, you know? And then she says, I'm going through a lot too, but I'm not going to tell you. Mm. I think that's just part of, like, the movie's allure is, like, where Margot, I think, is the best written character in the entire movie. Doesn't get the punchlines, but the allure is there, and I think the evidence is there of what is going on with her.
Now, there's a certain point, there's a couple montages in the movie. In one, we get a montage of Margot's secret years, which a lot of we had already heard about. Does it reveal anything?
I think that the person you want to compare all Tenenbaum siblings to is Eli Cash. And Margot is the one who hears about how Eli Cash sends Etheline all of his clippings. And Margot is disgusted by that. And not only keeps smoking a secret, but all of those adventures, those are awesome adventures. Like, she lived a life, and that's fucking rad. And she does not have that thing that Eli does of sharing it all.
Yeah, I have to get accolades. But, I get that. So, but again, we've heard about a lot of these adventures already. Does seeing it give us an extra window into her at all?
I think it aesthetically, the way they're all like so hyper composed, I feel like we get to see her past as the way she views it, which is a series of like vignettes that inform her plays. Because it's like each of those is almost like conceived of as like little 2-dimensional dioramas from her past. I think what's important about her being a like adopted kid is every single Tenenbaum kid, including Eli, who is like the sort of one that is and isn't, feels like an outsider. The one thing that like makes you a definite Tenenbaum child is if you feel like you are not accepted the way all the other ones are. And so they each feel like the outsider, and they all have a different reason to claim that as their own.
But the thing that the movie does, which is so brilliant, is it shows how they all feel like that, which is very specific to being a Tenenbaum, or part of literally every family that's ever
even
existed.
Royal doesn't feel like a Tenenbaum. Remember, Eli says, "I always wanted to be a Tenenbaum,"
but
and
wants
Royal
to
says,
be.
"Like
Yeah.
I always wanted to be as well."
Me too, dude.
And he's like, he is the Royal Tenenbaum of the Royal Tenenbaums.
And his is he kind of pushes himself out of the way. So is the movie saying like, and maybe it works best couched in white nonsense, is we all feel like this. The human condition is feeling outside.
Well, and this I think we can't understand this movie without understanding the book, The Brothers Karamazov. Like the way that like in The Brothers Karamazov, the idea is we are all Karamazovs. We're all Tenenbaums, right? Like the things that unite them and the things that they go through, they represent all of humanity. We're all in that house. We're all part of the family.
And you think we couldn't understand that without having read The Brothers Karamazov?
It's impossible to understand it without reading The Brothers Karamazov.
I think this movie, which goes out of its way to conspicuously reference books and literature, I think that there are avenues that are opened up if you compare it to other works of literature that study generations in the ways that like Brothers Karamazov does, or Infinite Jest. Like I do think that there are
begrudgingly.
He said Infinite Jest.
you gotta give points to the Infinite Jest. Because we're focusing on the siblings, what does it mean that as adults Richie and Margot dress essentially the exact same as they do as kids, but Chaz does not? Chaz does evolve from a kid stylistically.
But he reverts though, doesn't he? Doesn't he go from dressed like an adult as a child to being dressed like a child as an adult? They all have the same disease, which is that they didn't really have childhoods, and so they never really moved past being children. And that's the same thing Royal has. He is still just this 65 or 70-year-old child. And so like she wears a barrette in her hair constantly, like something like a little girl would do, because by being child geniuses, it removed the child part of the equation really, and it robbed them of that.
But I think this is also speaking to the whole like children's book of it all. You know, like there's not a picture on every page. You know, you sort of have to imagine this in your head. And if you're a kid reading this, this is exactly what Margot, Chaz, and Richie would wear as adults. You know, Richie's adult quote unquote uniform is just it's like a headband and then like a tennis sweater with a brown suit covering it, because that's adult, right? If you're a tennis player but now you're an adult, that's what you would wear. And then Chaz in the red gear, like this is just them. This is a child's imagination of what these people would wear, just like with Royal wearing not just a suit but his specific types of suits.
But Ryan, do you remember that part where Richie got a bunch of sweat in his eyes? No, you don't remember that part, do you? Because that headband kept all of that sweat out of his eyes. So I think there was a functional side to it that you're just purposely not paying attention to.
That is true.
But I guess because Margot and Richie, the kid actors and the adult actors, are in the same costume. So you think a red tracksuit is childlike and not just
His
weird
kids are
and
literally
specific?
wearing it.
Yes, I do. I do think that
Yeah.
if you think that that's what you should wear at all times,
If
then
you-
yes,
if you are a-
you sort of have a child's
If
brain.
you are a child who eats your lunch while drinking coffee, standing at your desk to quote save time, then for you to
From
age
what?
for you to age into an adult that wears one tracksuit every single day and then a different tracksuit for your father's funeral, I think honestly something is going on about your sartorial choices there.
It
Also,
feels-
if I was 12 and I was reading this book, like I feel like 12 is that perfect age of like your past children's books, but like really not yet into bestsellers at the airport. You know, like then what you would do is like, oh, this person has 2 kids. They're gonna wear the same thing. They're all 3 are gonna wear the same thing for sure.
Well, it definitely adds to the fairy tale storybook feel.
Oh,
of it to have
yeah.
that family. To me, it feels like Chaz very like proto Silicon Valley. The like I'm gonna wear the same thing every day so my mind can think other thoughts because I didn't think about which T-shirt I should wear that
I also-
day.
Yeah, there's that
Now
story
I will
about
solve the world's
Einstein
problem.
where both Einstein and Pee Wee Herman, when they both open up their closet, it's the exact same outfit all the way down.
I also felt like there was like an interesting color story going on, not just like beyond just like identifying characters with their outfits. I felt like sometimes there was like a meaning to the colors that I could only sometimes follow. I noticed that Ethylene, she switches between pink and blue a lot, and pink is a color that Royal wears a lot. He also wears a light blue, but then Henry wears blue, and when she's vacillating between them, she vacillates between wearing like reds and blues depending on like which character between the two of them she's closer to at the moment. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Just the fact that Richie covers up his tennis outfit with like a really like sandy brown suit, you know, like what other like color could obscure this more than just dirt brown?
Mhm.
And then, you know, Chaz, we didn't see him wearing the red as a kid. That's something that comes on when clearly his anger comes on because fucking God killed his wife.
Yeah, he's
you know,
like right. Yeah,
and
his red.
that's
is
when the red jumpsuits come on.
the color of frustration at God.
And then putting the kids in it, like I think that's another thing that speaks to Chaz too. You know, like he's sort of like this. He sort of thinks of himself as a god. Like I'm gonna dress all the people I control the same, whether it's in red tracksuits or Dalmatian dots or whatever.
Mhm.
You know, like that's a thing where he just says like, "Oh, if you guys are all uniform, then I know that you're mine. I won't lose you two in a group. I won't like. I'll always know that these mice are mine because they're Dalmatian. I'll always know that these kids are mine because they're dressed in red.
And because they'll have the exact traumas that I have, so
Yeah.
that I then impressed into their brains as well.
Here's hoping.
And the same hair, not too big, not too small, just that hair.
Think about like parent-children relationships. What is? I think it's hard not to then bring in the other is Dudley and Raleigh St. Clair. It does have a sort of parental connection there.
As a twosome, I love that their names are Raleigh and Dudley. Like you don't looking at the names, I don't think you get that, but to hear them, Raleigh and Dudley, like they really does sound like a couple of like Tweedledee and Tweedledum.
Yes. Is it just to build up the storybook character that way, or do you think it's also bringing up parentage and raising children?
I think that's about like the way, I think it underscores the way in which the movie shows how generations are like not the older generation raises the younger, but how the older and younger cobble together some sort of kind of dysfunctional, but still sort of like growth. Because by the end of it, you come away feeling like Dudley's the one that takes care of Raleigh Sinclair. Like he's the one who like seems to like actually have solutions or say things that even if they're like not emotionally appropriate, fit the mood and like help set the tenor.
Yeah, I think that Dudley does have a little bit of the precociousness that most Anderson kids do.
Yeah.
But a lot of, I mean, like, a lot of it is, oh, I don't have kids yet, so I'm going to have you around so I have somebody to fucking laugh at and mock. Like, there's a time where Raleigh St. Clair's face breaks. You know, like, Dudley can't do a thing that he asks, and he's like,
He loves
just
when he's
amazing. Oh, God. It's so good.
loves
that
how
you
fucked up
you
he
weren't able
is.
to do that.
Yeah, because he also has that ambition of, oh, this is just for the book. I can do
Yeah.
it for the book. And that's a little, I think it is a little more open because Etheline comes out looking like gold, but she also pushed kid geniuses there. So I think that ambitious parent of, I'm going to push my kid, his is open there
And-
that the movie's dealing with.
Ethylene comes off. This is just from this rewatch. Like, I've really never noticed this before, but Ethylene comes off as a little bit like a boss or the person with the hard hat that like makes sure that you clock in and clock out on time. Like, they were not getting warmth from their father throughout most of their lives, but the mom is just like, I don't know, I got this book, I'm raising 3 geniuses, and she wants to make them as genius as possible.
Yeah.
But not like as good a people as possible.
Well, she's doing the same thing
like,
Chaz is doing, right? He does a more warped version of it, but she has her kids basically run fire drills and stuff. I mean, she's having them hold press conferences. She's labeling them as geniuses when they're just children. Like,
but she has this end goal of like, oh, and I don't think her book was her end goal. Her end goal was, I'm gonna say that I gave birth to 3 very successful geniuses.
These would be my Dalmatian mice.
And what we have at the end is 3 people who sort of failed at life, and she had Royal to give all of the blame to.
Yeah,
but like,
so that's moral of the story.
It doesn't seem like there's not. Yeah, have a Royal, but it doesn't seem like there was a lot of hugs. There was not like a lot of cuddling and reading bedtime stories. It was a lot of, I'm going to make sure that you guys become the geniuses that you seem like you might be as 10-year-olds.
Even the way
I don't know if that's exactly the best mothering.
Even the way they enunciate when they speak to each other is like so formal, and there's a lack of warmth in there.
Which is fucked up because that's just Wes Anderson screenwriting, right?
Yeah,
but it does show you like that's how in his brain kids.
Well, these are like
the
desiccated East Coast like familial upper class relationships, right? They're like they esteem one another, but they have a really hard time just being like, I love you. And instead of like, oftentimes when my mind turns to you, I am suffused with a pleasure at the thought of our Congress. And it's like, okay, cool.
This has already been delved into. We don't have time to get into it here, but Wes Anderson and Noah Baumbach are best friends and co-writers. They have written scripts together. And doing this rewatch, I realized that they both had a similar childhood.
Tenenbaums, Baumbach.
Anderson went to write Royal Tenenbaums, and Baumbach went and wrote The Squid and the Whale. But it's like it basically is like, here's how we're dealing with our parents and how they treat children.
Well, that feels like the perfect time to end 5 minutes late. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to dive back into Ben Stiller's career. Taste buds, 2004 to 2006. Is Ben Stiller still a superstar? Ryan, who is currently on the Mount Rushmore Ben Stiller?
We've got Ted from There's Something About Mary. We've got Chaz from Royal Tenenbaums. We've got Greg Fokker from, I guess, just Meet the Parents. He was in 3 movies, but we'll just say Meet the Parents.
The Fokkerverse.
And Zoolander, who was only in, as far as we know, Zoolander 1.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
The famously named Zoolander 1.
2004 to 2006, Ben Stiller was in Envy, Dodgeball, Anchorman, Meet the Fockers, Night at the Museum, and Madagascar.
So I think right
Sprang
here,
to all fields, man.
Yeah.
But I think the big one here is Dodgeball, right? Like, this is facial hair
Envy?
back on. No, I've seen Envy.
I've seen Envy too, man. Where'd you go? Up and out.
Who hasn't seen Envy? Are we the only 3 people in any given room who've seen Envy?
So we can all agree
didn't
it's
we
not
go to
Envy.
a screening of Envy?
We did, yeah.
Fill me with envy.
with the poo-poo spray, right?
Yeah. Where does it go? I don't know. Up and out.
So Night at the Museum, Ryan? Is that
No,
what
wait, there was another one in
about?
here that I thought was even
Dodgeball.
It's Dodgeball. It's White Goodman in Dodgeball, I think, is the don't make me bleed my own blood, don't make me think my own thoughts. He has a pattern for the lines that he delivers, but I do think that his Dodgeball role was a big deal.
Yeah, it is the bigger and more popular version of his role in Heavyweights.
Oh, how about Anchorman?
Was he only in it for like 2 minutes?
Yeah, what was he in it?
Yeah, he was in it in the
big
giant
fight.
The big fight.
Oh,
It's hard. Ben Stiller's great, man. I think he might be cameo MVP. He can show up for 2 minutes and crush in a way so few can.
Yeah, like that was an ad lib. He didn't even know he was showing up to a fight. He just rolled onto the set.
Yeah, well, Farrell just said show up, and he just started yelling.
He was ready
at him.
to rumble. Okay, so that's such a small movie. Yeah, so I guess Dodgeball, I don't know. Dodgeball, I feel like, has like kind of a big cultural footprint, but it's not like you wouldn't sit down to watch Dodgeball right now, would you?
I think that I would say that based on looking at this list, I could see his character in Dodgeball taking over Chaz.
Yeah, I think Chaz, while important to maybe this group of folks, is, again, because Rushmore's iconic, not favorite, that I think Dodgeball, and especially you have to have a Ben Stiller facial hair representative. I think Dodgeball is it.
All right, well,
Maybe it's him once he gets tubby again singing "My milkshake brings all the boys to the yard" while playing with his boobies. You guys stay past credits in Dodgeball ever? No?
nope, guess not.
No. It's not the just friends of our life.
Don't call out things only I like, Ryan. So Night at the Museum in Madagascar, there are 3 of them both. We don't know that yet, but neither of them, Alex the Lion and the security guard from Night at Museum, don't do anything for you guys in iconography.
I think I've
kids.
seen a couple of them. I think I saw Madagascar something. But
Europe's
no.
Most Wanted?
Yeah, Europe's Most Wanted. That was actually a good movie, guys. I recommend it.
We'll talk about that later. But not there yet. Not there yet for
No,
the Ben Stiller.
definitely not.
I mean, when it comes to a dark chocolate or a coffee, Madagascar all the way. But for a
sure.
CGI movie, I don't know. I like to move
You're
it, though.
You're an over the hedge man?
Yeah, I'm an over the garden wall guy.
If I'm trying to drive around Madagascar, I'm going to rent a Madagascar. That's how I'm going to get around.
I feel like I should get a point for that, Mike. I don't not to tell you your job, but yeah.
Are you serious? He asked for a point and then
Ryan, what you did
Every
was
once in a
really
while.
bad.
Okay.
What you did was really
Every
bad.
once in a while, that'll happen. I will say Malagasy food, which is what you call things from Madagascar, is delicious, and everybody should try it. Gets a point for being worldly.
And for knowing adjectives.
Oh, and yeah, saying what you call food from Madagascar and then saying that's what you call it.
Yeah.
No, that's wow.
What
To
is
have
the damage?
Just let me have
to
this.
have control of the drop pad is really every white man's dream, isn't
You
it, Mike?
really don't have to analyze everything I do.
2006 to 2009.
Which is what you
we're-
call it. That is what he just said. Which is what you
Calling.
call it.
2006 to 2009,
Holy
we're calling I
shit.
Do What I Want to Do. And in that is The Heartbreak Kid, Tropic Thunder, Madagascar 2, and Night at the Museum 2, Battle of the Smithsonian.
Okay.
I think,
Tropic Thunder is well loved.
yes.
I can't
Yes,
remember
it is.
his part in it. Like, I remember Tom Cruise. I remember...
He
What
played
Do
the
You
guy
Mean,
who
You
always
People?
like you never go
Full, yeah.
No.
full.
Yeah, he
full.
went full.
Yeah,
He
he
doesn't
went full.
say it. He just did it. He's like, this is a movie that clicked that I never got it as a kid, that Ben Stiller has always been making fun of Hollywood.
I feel like 2008 is maybe the end of an era. Tropic Thunder is the end of an era where a lot of the words they said, a lot of the
Yeah.
blackface that they did is just done now. Like Tropic Thunder can have all the trophies, and let's just move on.
It is weird when blackface combos come up. Some people try to bring up Tropic Thunder, and it's the only one that resoundingly everybody's like, "Shut up, that's the point," and it does just move on in that conversation. You're like, what? We're not.
I remember
okay.
it being a big one for the R word. And
Yeah,
after it had been in
that's-
theaters for like
That's
a
the word
week,
that we're trying not to say.
yeah, people were finally like, we really shouldn't say that word anymore. And it was in that movie, and just how awkward for them.
It also wasn't crazy funny in the meantime. It wasn't hilarious.
I don't like that movie.
It did have Jay Baruchel. I always want to give a shout out to Jay Baruchel. And also, his name in the movie was Tug Speedman. It's a good name.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, I think the two young bucks in that film are way better than the older guys.
Who's
Jay
the other one?
Baruchel and the Booty Juice. Yeah, the rapper guy. Like, I think those two younger actors crush, and everybody else, it's like, oh, you're doing that thing you do.
Yeah.
Randy T. Jackson.
But
These are all swings and
R.I.P.
misses, I think. I don't think anybody from this era makes it on the mountain.
yeah, it's why it's called the I Do What I Want to Do era. It's and after that, from 2010 to 2013, we're calling it Ben Still Here. Greenberg, Little Fuckers, Tower Heist, Madagascar 3, Europe's Most Wanted, The Watch, and The Secret Life of Walter Mitty.
All right, so there's some fucking dumps here.
Yeah,
like
dude.
diaper dumps. Tower
Yeah.
Heist and what was the other one?
The Watch.
The Watch were supposed to be huge comedy blockbusters, made no money. But believe it or not, I'm a Greenberg fan.
Me too, buddy. Used to own it on DVD.
What?
I
No
fucking
way.
love.
What were the special
I love-
features?
DVD.
I love that.
Did Greenberg come on and do a director's commentary of the movie Greenberg? I would have
Yeah.
loved that.
In character.
No, this is a
and that's-
Noah Baumbach movie, Mike.
That's Baumbach, yes. And this is when, throughout the history of Pop Filter, you point out that I hate Baumbach. I actually love him. I just don't Sorkin his dick the way you do.
Terrific.
Because you're a dickhead. I like it. I celebrate Greenberg. I celebrate Squid and the Whale.
You finished that insult with because you're a dickhead.
Yeah.
Okay. I do want to give a couple moments for Baumbach, but I don't know if it can go on the mountain. But I really do think that like it's a perfect explosion of Baumbachiness and Stillerness. It's distilled into this one movie.
Distilled. And I think it does evolve. It matures his non-facial haired Ben Stiller type role. Like he grows, he's slightly different. He's allowed to think other things than Greg from Little Fockers.
He still closes his face up and chops a lot. Ugh.
I mean,
Ben Stiller.
That's a tick. He's not going to not do that. So nothing from this group getting added to the Mount Rushmore?
I don't think so, man.
No.
All right. The final era of Ben Stiller, 2014 to 2020, and we're calling it, because there's so many prolific eras, this is called I Mostly Produce now, because he's just not in that much anymore. While We're Young, Night at the Museum 3, Zoolander 2, The Meyerowitz Stories, Brad's Status, and Hubie Halloween. That just came out.
I have to say, I really like While We're Young and The Meyerowitz Stories. I think those are two well-directed movies.
Are those also both Babak?
Those are both Babak.
Yeah. The While We're Young is fucking great, where he's part of the older hipster couple trying to be cool for Adam Driver and Siegfried, Amanda Seyfried.
I do think that you're contractually obligated to do. If you're in a movie like Reality Bites in your youth, then you have to be in a movie like While We're Young when you're older, you know? Like, you have to bookend your career with movies like that.
A generational career commentary?
Yeah.
Now he's going to have to be the dad in a Meet the Fockers style comedy in the future.
Oh, my God. With Robert De Niro playing the kid? That's going to be hilarious.
Yes. But, like, playing the kid the way Bruce Willis did in Look Who's Talking. He's just the voice of the baby only the audience can hear.
What are you, talking to me? Hooah.
So, I'm not hearing any clamoring
Yeah, no.
for
It's gone Stiller.
roles.
I would say that overall, I think that you hit the nail on the head, Mike, when you said that, like, when he is mainstream, but, like, sort of mostly making fun of mainstream, just slightly, you know, like turning it up to 11, then that's where I sort of fell in love with him. When he is trying to appeal to mainstream audiences, like falling in mop water in a museum, which I haven't seen in those movies, but I have to assume at some point he puts his foot in like a mop bucket and then falls over, right?
Yeah.
Security guards are well known to also mop.
I'm guessing there's a lot of like conspicuous buffing of the floor. And then at some point he slips, falls on his back, and like slides all the way across, like through several rooms while it makes a really loud squeaking. This sounds funny. I like this.
His face.
You're back on board.
Yeah, I like it.
His face slides right into the crotch of a mummy.
Oh,
Can
man.
you even imagine?
Oh, that is stinky crotch. You know that mummy hasn't showered in eons. So his production company, Red Hour, because like throughout all this, he helps make things like The Birthday Boys. I think the Mr. Show reboot, like Comedy Bang Bang. Do you think he makes the Madagascar movies, your Nights at the Museum, your Little Fockers, so he can keep getting money, so he can keep making the cool shit he used to be in, and now he's like, I want to help bring in the new generation?
I guess. I feel like a person like this has enough money. Like, going back to the Royal Tenenbaums, I don't know if that's allowed in this segment, but Wes Anderson was talking about how his co-writer, his common co-writer, Owen Wilson, was just in blockbuster after blockbuster. And I don't think it's because of the money. I think it's because, look at my name in lights. You know, that's what kept
it's fun.
Owen Wilson away.
It's allure.
And you can only get it while the getting's good. So, like, you can't decide how much you want to do.
Away.
You just have to do whatever you can while you can.
I mean, they're essentially running backs, right? Like, eventually, even though it's not like their legs or their physicality, it's going to go away, and then you can't have it again. But yeah, like, Judd Apatow is another big person who was like, directing and writing is hard. I don't want to do it anymore. I think and he was never an actor. It's just like, I think I want to, like, bring up new people. Like, I think that's what becomes the interest.
Does it make you guys sad? So in the last 10 years, there's been 3 movies a couple of us have liked. Does that make you sad that, like, it does seem like the Ben Stiller era is done?
I mean, and the other thing, too, is that he was so, like, counterculture, you know? That's the most fleeting thing. Even more than the legs of a running back or, like, your star, like, how long you can be a star. It's, at a certain point, you lose that ability to be counterculture.
Is he the Green Day of alt comedy?
He's the green bomb of alt comedy.
Oh!
That's a great comparison, actually, though. Like, imagine Green Day comes out with a new album right now. You're not definitely going to check it out, right? But
I am definitely going to check it out.
Yeah, Ryan has listened to the one. Greg, I didn't know this until recently. There was a Green Day album that came out this year that only
And
Ryan
it's
has listened to.
fantastic.
No. Thank you for buying our albums.
Okay, that's Blink-182. So, I mean, if you're going to...
That was American Idiot.
Get it right.
Don't want to be an American idiot.
Okay, but it was American Idiot sung by Tom DeLonge.
You guys are both being American idiots.
Waffle.
So do we have the mountain? Do we have a quorum? Ryan, I forgot your name for a second. Please read
Ben
the Ben Stiller Mount Rushmore.
You really call me Ben Stiller?
Ben
Ben?
Stiller.
You were just doing so many chops.
Your Ben Stiller Mount Rushmore is Ted from There's Something About Mary.
Better off Ted.
White Goodman from Dodgeball. That's
Better
a surprise. Greg Fokker from the Fokker series of movies, the parent meeting parents, whatnot, and Zoolander from the Zoolander series of movies.
Are there any surprises on there, or is that just like, yeah, obvious?
I think it's pretty chalk. I think the only one that was a surprise, or like the only one up in the air, is White Goodman, but it replaced Chaz, and I do think that we did a good job of saying Royal Tenenbaums is not as big of a deal to the world as it is to us.
Right, and White Goodman represents heavyweights, represents the nurse from Billy Madison Hubie Halloween,
that's a good
represents Tony Wonder. Anytime Ben Stiller has facial hair, he's Dodgeball. That is Ben Stiller's career retrospective, and guys, I fucking love Ben Stiller.
I do too. I will say, hey, Ben, I know you're listening. I love you, Ben.
Yeah, can Red Hour produce this podcast? Because we are looking.
We are hemorrhaging money right now.
When we
Bad
come
robot
back,
just left us.
we'll let you know. Well, he tried to fit lens flares in on a podcast, and that is hard to pull off. When we come back, more Royal Tenenbaums. Taste buds. Though it's his third movie, The Royal Tenenbaums seems to sort of set the stage for that Anderson style, the symmetrical, bold colors, monotone delivery, fairy tales he's now so well known for. Is Anderson able to give the movie and the characters an emotional heft that makes Royal Tenenbaums more than just the highest tweet per second comedy of all time?
Shit. Okay, so you want us to talk about like the characters and the dialogue, but also his direction style and the backgrounds and the colors.
Everything Anderson comes.
And the setting. All right.
I didn't say setting. Fuck New York.
Well, I would like to.
I feel
start with the
like
setting.
New York is like another kid.
Don't,
Ryan.
dude.
Wait,
don't.
hang on. I feel like The House.
Okay. Still terrible.
I feel like Buckley.
Let's start with the house though, because this is almost cartoon style. And when I say that, when we're talking about films, I'm talking like capital F films. I'm talking about sort of like storybook style.
Mm-hmm.
This is a house that should and could not exist. This house would be worth tens of millions of dollars if it was
and yet still fucking
in
sucks.
New York.
Why is the
But-
kitchen so? Like, do you like the kid? That's
Oh yeah. Well, I can only imagine that is one of 7 kitchens.
It has to be,
kitchens,
right?
and that's the smallest one.
yeah.
Yeah, they have a ballroom.
Yeah, but even the
Blitz. They did a Blitz.
even
in
the
there.
ballroom sucks. It's
What?
nice to have a big ball.
What does that mean?
Okay, the ceilings are it's like 11-foot ceilings. You can't have a
Well,
ballroom and then have the ceilings be that low.
Here's
It's
what I
this
mean by
dark,
cartoon,
cramped
though,
ballroom.
or fable,
You don't live in a
or like,
ballroom, Mike.
or
I was
children's
just- I
book.
just thought you were hoity-toity. I was just for the listeners. I did look straight up. To
Honestly,
check my
the ceilings in your apartment are higher than the ceilings in that ballroom. That's a shitty ballroom. I'm
Audience,
sorry.
I'll get back to you in 1 second as soon as they're done. All right, we're back. Audience, what I was trying to say is that the house seems like it's almost Bugs Bunny level, can pull a room out of anywhere, anytime it wants. And that's sort of what makes it like this living, breathing thing. There's no way that anyone can afford that, even in your 35th year. But no matter where they are, there's a different room for whatever they need. And it's because Wes Anderson needs to be like, shit, I've got a good script, I've got good actors, but I got to do some set dressing. And that is a thing that was like, it was there in Rushmore. Not so much in Bottle Rocket, but there in Rushmore. But I think Royal Tenenbaums blew it up into this thing that stayed for his entire career of, I want the background to feed nonstop information to the foreground.
You know what's weird though? A house is a 3-dimensional space. he doesn't in this movie, either he doesn't understand or he doesn't embrace 3-dimensional spaces. He's addicted to like 2-dimensional spaces. And so he refigures this house as a series of 2-dimensional rather than 3-dimensional spaces. Give me like a walking through the house scene, but instead it's
I don't
like
think
a
that's
constantly
true, though.
moving across
No.
one dimension of it.
I don't think that's true at all. I think that he is doing it, but you have to look at it like when Margot, I guess in the beginning, built that diorama of we're just going to show you what we have right now, you know? And that's sort of like when you're a kid, you build these dioramas because you can only see what you think about. And so that's how it works
To
too.
me, the whole
although
movie feels like a diorama. It feels like the sets are conspicuously like dioramas themselves, which are like really they're faux 3-dimensional spaces. They're really just 2-dimensional spaces, but you can't actually move through the third dimension. It just appears
But that's
that it's
his
there.
That's like if this is setting his deal. That is, so many of his frames look like paintings of that way. The Grand Budapest Hotel has so many moments like that. Moonrise Kingdom does as well.
I feel like Grand Budapest Hotel, though, actually puts the camera like behind a character and walks through in a 3-dimensional way the space. I feel like the movie doesn't employ that dimension. But
I guess that freezing and looking at it, that is Mishima's brought up earlier, and that's the moments that were in Mishima's books are obvious, and that's this whole thing is a book, and so it feels flat. It doesn't feel like an accident. It feels on purpose, and not flat in a derogatory way.
Yeah, I mean, it's conspicuous enough to be a choice. I wonder if it's the right choice.
Ryan, you can say don't.
Don't talk. Let me is what I was trying to say. You don't have that sort of brain when you're reading a book, you know, like you just don't have that like Aaron Sorkin walking around stuff. You just have like this sort of flat surface that barely has a background in it. That's what we see in pictures that are drawn in children's book, but more importantly, that's what we see in the pictures that children draw. I think that's what he was mostly going for, is that this is a movie made not for children, but by children. And it's not like he wants the Goonies to make a movie, you know? The Goonies is obviously a movie that is made about children by old men who do not understand children. This is a movie
by us, I think is what
yeah, it's Fubiz, but this is a movie that is made by somebody who really understands how children's brains work. I think you can tell that not just by how it's shot, but how children are treated. Like they are the best. That the supreme race or the supreme being of this movie is children, and that's why we have that. That's why all children's pictures that are in books or that they draw, it's just front and center. Here is the thing that we're looking at front and center. They don't know how to put something in a different part of the paper that they're drawing on. That's why every fucking thing that we see, everything that's important, is direct front and center of the screen, which is literally against the rules of how you're supposed to make movies.
How about the scene with Ethylene and Royal where he says that he's sick? I thought that scene was interesting because the camera is, I would say, Ryan, there like center mounted on the image, but it stays there for the entire scene in a way that like I noticed, I think, more this time because of the piano teacher and the fact the piano teacher never cut and never moved the camera in a movie that Royal Tenenbaums has a lot of cuts and has a lot of like camera movement, a lot of it conspicuous and obviously like, you know, the camera moving in on people's faces and everything. But that one scene is extremely still and kind of off center, although the camera is centered on like I would say like the average of the center of the action of the scene.
Right. So what you've been talked into this thing where now everything is different. So now the things that you are expecting from movies, it reverses. And so that stands out. Instead of Gwyneth Paltrow coming out of a bus, walking directly towards the camera, that now doesn't seem weird. And now when a thing is shot like a normal movie, that now seems weird. And that's a lot to do for 10 seconds, especially because you have to assume that your average Royal Tenenbaum watcher has not seen the first two movies.
Yeah, what do you think is gained or lost by Anderson breaking the rules of filmmaking to the point that you never forget you're watching a movie?
That it's closer to a fable. You know, I think that it's it's just part of a children's book that we are now in and not just reading. And I know that like Alec Baldwin is here and the tops of a lot of book chapters are here, but I think that he doesn't just say like, that's all we'll do. I think he sticks to that thing the entire time.
I think also the movie makes a promise that you like. you're in an artificial world, and I'm going to be gentle with you. I think like, it's you're entering into a different territory, and part of that is like the overriding consciousness of this universe is going to protect you, and that was really welcome after the piano teacher, which is the exact opposite is true. Like this universe will be indifferent towards you, and then like tending towards actually inducing pain in you.
And again, what is the only thing that takes you out of this world that's going to be comfortable? Taxi cabs that are the most beat up, disgusting, rusted bullshit taxi cabs I've ever seen before. That's the only way for you to get out of this fable is for you to like get on this disgusting horse and then get out of the world.
Is that him trying to say there are real world issues going on? This is real New York. It's these people created their own fable. You're not just watching a fable.
Yeah, I mean, like I think it's Pleasantville sort of, where in Pleasantville when you drove to the end of the street, you just started at the other side of the city. It's just that one street. This is
what's at the end of Main Street.
If you just get into this dirty cab, then you can leave this perfect world that has been created for you. And that's why Margot reacts like that, is that, like, I didn't know that we could go back. I thought that we had to get in this rusty-ass taxi and move on, and now she's invited back. That's why Richie, went on to fame and then just said, oh, I'll just get in this boat then, because I'm far away from this house, and when you're in the house, you get in the rusty taxi cab and you get driven far away.
I noticed
you don't think
that young Richie has like obviously a number of interests. He likes like semaphore, and he likes ham radio, and he likes the sea, and he likes cars. But I noticed that as he grows up, he gets like transfigured into just this like grotesque of jest tennis. And I guess that's the part that kind of reminded me of Infinite Jest, that his fascination with tennis. But it was interesting to see the way in which his character gets like diminished over time. Adult life like forces him into the mold of being just one thing and removing him from being like the complexity that he had been.
Well, yeah, it's that, but it's also that for all three of them, they all moved into this part of the life where it's like it's racing forward with the fact that you were young geniuses, and then you're in the like the height of it.
It reminds me of Magnolia. Like what he used to be. I used to be a genius when I was a kid. Now I'm just dumb.
But with no self-reflection.
Yeah.
And I think that Anderson is saying that like that's not the good part of life. What is the good part of life is whenever that's all over, when you can look back and then, say like, and now I'm going to grow from here. That's what we're watching is I already peaked, and that's actually not that important anymore. What I'm going to do is self-reflect, and that's the movie that we get.
The good part of life is when you can get your grandkids and just try to get them hit by cars in the middle of the street.
Dude, that was
it
was so innocuous until then. It was like oh, let's push over a trash can. Let's
steal some
Funyuns.
Like, and then like I almost thought they had to do tricks.
There's one part where Gene Hackman almost got hit by a fucking van.
I mean, it stops like an inch away from him.
So do you think Anderson there is saying there is like three stages of life? Is there childhood, adulthood, re-childhood?
No, I think that what he's saying is that get to the self-reflective part, right? So like Gene Hackman never got there, and so even though that the three kids and Gene Hackman are all a generation apart, they're all hitting this part, this specific part of life of like, hey, let's look back and see that like maybe we didn't do it right, maybe we made some mistakes, or more importantly, maybe we shot through it. Maybe we sort of like rested on our laurels and just like shot through time instead of being like, fuck, man, I was kind of an asshole. I was kind of stupid. I was kind of relying on my talents instead of like actually thinking about stuff.
I think it's also like about that you can grow up at any time, and it doesn't have to be the dire, terrible version of growing up. That's not the real thing. That there is actually a good, real version of growing up, and it's about being accountable and actually like being yourself in front of the people you love and having them love the real you and not like the projection of you. And so I think that it's like at any moment you can do that. Even if you're a 70-year-old child, you can still grow up, and it's not a tragedy. It's a good thing, because when you grow up, it's going to be like a place of full acceptance.
Do you think all of them get to there, or only Richie does?
No, I think they all get there.
It's 100%.
Yeah,
it's 100%.
They all cross the finish line.
I mean,
they all achieve at the same moment. They look into each other's eyes, and they all cross the line at the same time.
I mean, that's romance.
The Chaz line at the end, that like the memorable Chaz line of "I've had a rough year, Dad," which is hard for me to say with just talking about it without crying.
Seriously.
I think like that's a big one, but also Chaz lands on the gravel next to Eli, and they have a conversation after Chaz was about to kill Eli for almost killing his sons. Like that's a big moment that they have. They all come to some conclusion of like, oh fuck, growing up and in the way that Wes Anderson wants to tell us, this self-reflection is the most important part. And when Chaz sees that like Eli is sort of doing it too right now, that's Eli's "I've had a rough year, Dad" moment. And so now Chaz doesn't want to kill him anymore. We all just want to get all of our loved ones to that point. And that's why Chaz is okay being on the ambulance holding his dad's hand in the end of the movie, is because they have passed that point.
And
he's not going to
I think those characters
he's not going to forgive him for all the shit. He's just going to sort of forget for a second because they moved past that point. Sorry, Greg.
I think also I noticed watching it, like, is it crazy to be like Eli Cash and Charlie Chaz? Like, Cash and Chaz are very similar names, and they seem to be on like a very similar kind of journey, and their journey's actually a butt right in that one like crazy cathartic moment where Ben Stiller just throws him over the wall.
Yeah, I think there's something very interesting about one sibling interacting with another sibling's best friend, because they're so siloed. So I don't think this movie digs into this well, but it feels like you're fighting your replacement. Like at some point, Richie and Chaz were best friends, and Eli then was there, and this is them taking that out on each other.
But I mean, like, they do work together as well, because Chaz is jealous of Richie's wanting to be a Tenenbaum. You know, like, that's how they're separated, is that...
Eli's.
Or, yeah, I'm sorry. Chaz is jealous of Eli's wanting to be a Tenenbaum because everyone wants to be a Tenenbaum except for Chaz. Eli wants it the most, and this is sort of the connection they have. And it happens twice. The movie's sort of kind of bookended by it, because we have the end thing, and then we have the beginning thing where Richie and Eli are on the same BB gun team. You know, like, they make sure to point out that Chaz and Eli are against each other there. And not only do I think that's important, but I also think it's important to point out that kids should not be shooting BBs at each other.
Well,
like, that is a fucking bad game.
If you do one pump, it's fine. It's when Gene Hackman, who's doing clearly multiple pumps, you can't do that. If you could shoot somebody with one pump on the BB gun, but when you're breaking skin, that's multiple pumps. He's an adult. He should know that.
One more thing I learned from the commentary is
that it's the speed round.
Air horns are good.
What did you learn from the commentary?
That
We'll allow it.
Andrew Wilson, Luke and Owen's brother, got shot by their dad right in the hand with a BB. And so when it cuts to Chaz's hand of the BB right between the knuckles, that's just his fucking knuckle that has a literal BB right in there.
Nice.
Oh, I love putting real fucking parental issues in your movie.
There are no teams.
And then laughs. Yeah. And then laughs. Like, hey, I'm doing my job as a dad. I'm teaching you a lesson right now.
Growing up, before we get to the speed round, I'd go to my best friend growing up. There'd be a giant 4th of July block party at his house every year, and there was a giant water fight between his household's party and his neighbor's household party. His neighbor's household party was mostly adults. His was mostly kids. An adult took the gutter water and then sprayed it right into my eyes, so there was pebbles and stuff in it. And for years would bring up that I was a little baby who cried and ended that year's water fight. That I just realized I had my own Royal Tenenbaum in that fucking asshole.
I don't know if you guys had this, but me and my brother would do that same thing, not with BB guns, but with squirt guns. And then we'd look up to where our dad should be, and then there was just a ghost because he was dead.
But then the ghost dad would have a BB gun and he'd shoot you.
Now, he would just eat a ton of hot dogs. What is it with ghosts and eating an entire hot dog cart full of hot dogs?
Ghosts love hot dog carts. Anything from carts. Is it falafel? Is it hot dogs? Is it shawarma? Ghosts love it.
Not kettle corn.
It is,
though.
like we said... There's no kettle corn.
Is this popcorn?
Carts,
No,
Greg.
kettle corn. Get the fuck out of it. What the hell are you doing? My kids go to school on this street, you animal.
There's no kettle corn in baseball.
Why isn't this movie called the Ethylene Tenenbaums?
Yeah.
We had a whole segment about how Margot is not represented, which I think is bullshit. Like, I think Margot is one of the most important characters. Ethylene. She is the one who I definitely could have used more of, and I could have used more of her just kissing dudes. I have not slept with a man in 18 years, and then watching her and Danny Glover try to remember how to kiss was adorable.
I know that Gwyneth Paltrow is obviously like probably the star of the beauty Olympics of this movie or whatever. But my viewing of this time, I come away with thinking Angelica Houston is the most beautiful woman that is maybe.
Do you know she portrayed beauty in my favorite film of all time?
Is that true?
Beauty and the Beast?
Stealing
No,
Beauty?
it's
'Cause I
Captain
think that was
EO.
with Tyler, actually.
When Michael Jackson in the film Captain EO turns the robot into beauty, it's Angelica Houston who is the representation of beauty.
Yeah, so I watched Royal Tenenbaums, and the next night I watched Addams Family Values. Should Angelica Houston have won every award ever? She's
So amazing.
insanely talented. She's beautiful, has always been beautiful. Why don't people love her more?
If you read reviews from like the 80s about like, because her dad is like an all-time Hall of Fame director, right? And so then everybody was like, oh, you just get a job because that's who your dad, because of how fat and ugly you are. You are fat and ugly and disgusting, and that is what she got to start her career.
Wow.
And that's not who I know. Who I know is, Morticia, who is sent me through a thing when I was a kid.
Yeah, the definition of...
Yeah, she did. The definition of sending you through a thing?
The definition of, like, because it's not just that she's attractive, it's that she always has like this power behind her beauty, and like a hyper competence that like almost every character that she plays has, but is most apparent in Ethylene. Like she seems to be the font of genius for this group. He's the font of like Roy is the font of like caddishness, but she's the font of like actual genius. She's like the God spark.
Back when we were all watching Transparent, do you guys remember that?
I do.
Before we realized that it's fucked up.
Yeah,
2 seasons, then out.
She came in like halfway through the second or third season and just owned the room. Just like she has a Jack Nicholson, who was her former boyfriend, like presence of just like, you guys are trying to act and that's cool, but I have a presence.
Why the monotone for 90% of the characters?
Like their tone of voice? Because they're disaffected.
That's Wes Anderson, dude.
If you're not Chaz and you're not Royal, you're monotone.
Because they're disaffected, hyper intellectuals.
That's super funny.
Is there a reason Chaz and Royal are not like that?
Well, I mean, I think that Chaz and Royal are like that for a lot of the time, and I think when they're not like that, it's super hilarious. Chaz freaks out a couple of times a little bit, but when when Royal is like trying to like endear himself back into the family, and Chaz walks through the room, and Royal sticks out his hand, and Chaz fully Ben Stillers all over the hand and slaps it 4 or 5 times. Like, because that seems so weird in a Wes Anderson movie, Like everyone is monotone and disaffected, and so for him to do that is insane.
Chaz is the most street smart of the kids, and Royal is he was a lawyer, but he's like a street smart character. He doesn't have that like, super like I know how to speak Latin, and so I don't care about the world anymore. Ennui.
But I mean, like I've seen Bruce Willis and Edward Norton do Wes Anderson dialogue it perfectly. Like it's a thing that you get into. Danny Glover, even though he's like the only normal person in this movie, he still has that way about how he speaks, which is it's just a Wes Anderson movie.
Does this movie come dangerously close to glamorizing depression and suicide?
Yeah, I think that there is a little like I don't think that it is a worry that we need to have, or that like he's going to cause some big social ill. But I think that there is a certain cool factor to the suicide scene.
I think that Wes Anderson knows how to shoot cool as far as Wes Anderson goes. I feel like that like based on like watching Scorsese and Godard and all the movies that like basically created Wes Anderson, we know that when he wants something to be cool, it's Gwyneth Paltrow coming out of a bus, right? Like we know. Like film has taught us that is cool. I do not get that aspect from when he's trying to actually like, be dark.
I think it's like such like the music is so driving, and he's like the way he's like so centered in the frame, and the way he goes from being shaggy to like looking so beautiful and shorn, and then the conspiratorial tomorrow I'm gonna kill myself. Like I think he like takes the off ramp maybe by having him lying there with his like the blood and all the hair and everything. But I think that there is certainly this moment of like, I don't know, intense sort of like self-reflection that is like a form of glorification of it.
Well, I think you said that off ramp, but it's the escalation. I think self-reflection is good. The shaving your head and face in the mirror is a good physical representation of the self-reflection, and then there's the going too far, wrapping back around to slitting your wrists, and then dropping it, and that's when it gets ugly. So like pushes it back. Like I guess this is cool because it is a good, healthy thing to do, and then you just keep pushing it, and it's gross, and you need help. Should art even be worried about that, glorifying it, or can art just art it up?
With this one particular issue, it I guess gives me pause more than others. I think ultimately, foundationally, it's not art's responsibility to like behave in such a way that doesn't cause mass panics, because those usually are not actually very valid. But it does seem like there's something slightly different with glorifying suicidal ideation.
I'm gonna create a new theory right now. It's called Charles Barkley theory, and I feel like that Charles Barkley saying "I am not your role model." I think that's a good line because hey, Charles, before that nobody thought you were, but he was famous enough.
Remember what Charles Barkley would do, everybody.
He was famous enough where like we at least heard his name. I think that if you're making mainstream movies, I definitely do think it's something that you have to consider. If you're gonna make movies that only play on the walls of museums in cities that don't have that big of a population, then no, I don't think you have to care about it. I think that and I'm not saying that Wes Anderson was not concerned about it. I think that if you're making mainstream movies or if you're making albums that a lot of people have access to, then that is something that you do have to consider.
You hear that, Lana Del Rey? What does death represent in this film?
It feels like it depends on what aspect of death you're talking about, because like we were just talking about that scene with Richie, and that brush with death is as much a form of birth for him, and it comes at a moment where a lot of people are experiencing these sunderings that are actually a form of birth, like Royal getting kicked out of the house and being discovered. That's the best thing that happens for Royal or for anybody else in the movie. Really, it's a death, but it's a release from a bad, outmoded way of being, and a rebirth into a new way of being.
Let's be honest real quick. Helen Tenenbaum, who Margot got her middle name about, or named after.
That's a trick. You don't have a middle name.
She was probably not cool. I bet Helen Tenenbaum was, like, she fucking sucked, right? But she died, and now we're all supposed to respect her.
I feel like there's something in the movie that they don't really talk about that, but it's alluded to when Henry says, I don't think you're an asshole. I think you're a son of a bitch.
Yeah,
like that feels like a callback to something. So far, we've only seen him being like weirdly reverential of his mother. But was she supposed to?
Son of a bitch is a good insult because I'm avoiding insulting you.
Yeah, and I'm insulting this woman.
Is a fucking straight up bitch.
Interesting. I just took that as that's a funny thing to say, but you think it's saying more.
But no,
things about
I mean
hell.
her portrait above the fireplace is straight up Trump family, right?
Yeah, it's grim. It's a grim visage.
And the fact that the way that Royal was raised and acts now and then respects her makes me think that, like, he went through some shit.
It was quasi-abusive.
I don't think that Helen was great.
I mean, what kind of people never grow up? It tends to be people that are damaged as children.
And the only way that to be respected by Royal is to fucking die. And that's what I think the movie's saying. And then we have this new generation of, hey, no, Richie, don't die. The way to be respected is to not die. That's the way to do it.
I think real literal death in this is shown as meaningless. People want to find meaning behind it, and so they do things like say, like, died heroically saving his family from a...
And he says,
the best epitaph.
I want my epitaph to say
But
that.
ultimately, I think real literal death in this is meaningless, and that's what we're supposed to take away from it. Life is what has the meaning. Death is just this thing that's going to come and, like, turn out our lights one day, but we shouldn't think of more of it than that.
That's my actual favorite Royal moment is when he looks at that epitaph and he says, I want my epitaph to say that. But saying, like, I will do nothing to have people write that on my epitaph. I just wish people would. Like, that is Royal in a nutshell.
I like what you said, Greg, more at the beginning of it, where you're like, it depends on the death, because for death to be meaningless in this, does that take any power out of Chaz's wife's death?
No, because I would say it's not that her death doesn't matter to him. She mattered to him, and so now her absence matters to him, obviously. But the death itself, it didn't mean anything. It didn't it is ultimately it's just the end of her story, and so that part is like important. Her absence is important, but I think
her death meant a lot to me because she was a very attractive woman.
What's the wild javelina represent?
That wild spirit of Royals, right? Like the whooping it up, the going out there and getting in go-karts, the mama pajama in, right? The rolling out of bed, the going to the police station.
Now, We all know that Buckley dies at the end. What this question presupposes is maybe
he didn't, right? Like, they don't move the car in the time of the movie, so maybe he's just down there taking a little nappy poo. That's what I think.
Then there's no ending. Like, they make it clear that...
Thanks, Dr. Manhattan.
Sorry, I'm just going to sit on this pink stump, and I'm going to think for a while.
Well, my balls are out.
And it seems like I'm thinking about big things, but really I'm just thinking, my balls are just out.
My balls are out. It is cold.
Wait, do you think somebody can see my balls right now? Is there a Martian?
What's the thing, Greg? If like I'm a D&D character and I've got like a little owl next to me, what's that called?
Familiar.
Yeah.
A familiar. The movie makes it clear that there are familiars and maybe even more than that. The movie makes it clear that Buckley is the mom, right? And there is no way for the family to move on until Buckley is dead. And that sucks.
Shit.
That sucks that Buckley had to die, because Buckley, by the way, somehow looks 6 months old and 14 years old and is adorable the entire
That's a
time.
bloodhound,
I love the way
brother.
when they hit the road and he's hanging out the window as well. Oh, man, that's the best Buckley moment for me, when he's like action hanging out the window.
Bloodhounds don't crack, is what they say.
Why all the Christmas music in the background when it never seems to be
Because of the
Christmas?
It's not
Tenenbaums.
Christmas music.
What?
It's not Christmas music. It's nostalgia. I don't think that the first thing that we think of when we hear that is Christmas. I think it's the first thing that we think of when we hear that is childhood.
I think
And-
nowadays,
It's Charlie Brown Christmas
I think
music?
nowadays,
Yeah.
I think the Charlie Brown thing had a resurgence since this movie came out, and I think it now feels more like Christmas than it would have back when this movie first came out.
But when you hear that bling, 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 then you all of a sudden revert, and you don't even know you're doing. Like the arms on your hairs are reverting, but you're not. You know, like all of a sudden you're feeling weird, and then we go back to an ice cream shop with just
Your
a.
first boner.
I was gonna say butterscotch sundae, but
Your first butterscotch boner.
I don't know what gave you your first boner.
These people love writing books, huh?
Yeah. Man, nothing easier. You can be crazy, your whole life falls apart. Nothing easier than just sitting down and just hammering out a little book, right? Easiest thing in the world to do. Yeah.
Makes you feel like a real
yeah.
piece of shit for
If
not
you
so
don't
far,
like say
Greg.
you don't have a few books. Wow, why not? Like it seems like it's pretty fucking
I
easy.
will say this though, and this goes out to everybody in the audience, and I think to these characters, 50 pages. If you could write 50 pages of a book, and on page 51, it is blank pages from there until 300, no one will ever know. They will never find out the fact that you wrote 50 pages of a book and you made it 300
As you guys
pages.
were watching this, were you constantly looking to see what page the movie was on?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, we're like 161. Okay, we're like halfway through at this point.
I always thought it was 420, bro.
Ayo!
Last question of speed round. Does all the Margot foot stuff bug Ryan?
What about when she turns off the TV with her foot? She's so adorable in that scene.
It's so
What?
hot.
When her, I wasn't gonna say.
So who's weirder then? Me or Mike?
I was just gonna say she's like such a little kid when her mom is like, "This isn't very safe," and she's like, "It's tied to the radiator." She like is so obviously still 12 years old in that scene.
You know what else is tied to the radiator? My gag reflex. What the fuck are we doing here?
That's all the time we have. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, it's awards season. Taste buds, it is awards season, and as we previously mentioned, the Royal Tenenbaums did receive a nomination for Best Screenplay from the Oscars. Did not win. And it received a Golden Globe for Best Actor in a Comedy for Gene Hackman, who did not go, because that's Hackman style, baby. But what we're going to do is give it all the awards it deserves.
I had nominated Spirited Away for a couple of these.
Is that gonna be a problem?
I guess we'll see. If
It's
you're
gonna be
pathetic and
weird.
moan for it, maybe you get it.
Doesn't that sound like Rivers Cuomo ejaculating?
Yes. Yes, it does. Let's kick it off with Best Alec Baldwin Line Delivery, Greg.
Okay, so when I saw this was an award, I was like, man, I just don't remember a really good reading. So I literally watched the movie one entire time, just hunting for Alec Baldwin great moments. And here's what I'm going to say.
The narrator, for those who, for some reason, have listened to this whole show and have not watched the movie yet.
We are going to provide this one bit of context. And here's what I'm going to say, and it is 100% a cop-out. Alec Baldwin has the chance to come in here and ham it up and try to say, hey, I know you can't see my face, but I'm still in this fucking movie. And he opts not to do that, and he blends kind of into the background, and I don't think that he has one standout line reading. I think he does a wonderful job of not getting in the way of what else is going on.
Let's keep in mind that the narration was not live. I bet on the cutting room floor, there's so many times where Alec Baldwin was like, nobody would do that fucking bitch. Get over there.
He got drunk
Talk
and
to your wife.
some voicemails for his daughter.
Look at these pigs. Look at these little piggies.
A fun tidbit I learned is that he based his inflection and character of Jack Donaghy on Royal Tenenbaum.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I don't really see it. I guess a besuited piece of shit.
I think probably that it starts there and then it grew into something completely different. I can see it being the same seed, but obviously it's a very different looking tree.
Ryan?
Wait, Greg,
what
was
Little
yours?
Pigs on the cutting room floor? Greg said none of them.
Yeah.
Or all of them?
I said that there's not one
Greg said,
standout reading.
Ryan,
okay.
Please take this award away.
This is right away. This is towards the beginning of the movie, but it's he started buying real estate in his early teens and seemed to have an almost preternatural understanding of international finance. And it's finance, but he said finance, and I was like, Alec Baldwin, you've done it again.
Ryan.
Yeah, saying that word that way will make me hate you and laugh every step of the way.
Can I go for Greg real quick?
Please go for Greg.
For Greg, it's
go for Greg.
It's when Royal says, this has been the best 6 days of my life, and then Alec Baldwin says, and then he realized it was true. And I feel like that also invented Ron Howard on Arrested Development.
That was going to say my next tidbit. Yep. Mitch Hurwitz saw this movie and went, I guess I'll stop writing that thing I've been writing. And then a couple years later went, fuck that. I'm going to keep writing it. But I do think the narrator was based on this.
And then Royo realized what he was saying is true. Yeah. Good job, movie.
Your magical musical moment of the week. Let's start with Ryan.
All right, this is hard, and I'm not going to go through all of my nominations, of which there were many, because Greg still has to go.
You don't have a bunch of points, do you?
But
I do.
I had to eventually decide on, and here's what I'm into. Right? Here's what I'm into. When Royal walks into a room and we can hear it's very quiet, and he's like, "No, Chaz, I'm just going to take your boys out for a little bit." He's like, "What? What are you talking about? You better protect them." And he's like, "Of course I will." And then and then it cuts to Simon and Garfunkel singing "Me and Julio" down at the schoolyard while they do all sorts of naughty things. And this was so close, guys. I had 7 nominees for this one, but this is what I have to go with.
This is another one where you could watch the entire movie trying to figure out what is the right one. You didn't say it, though. You want to hear what the right one is? The right one is clearly Margot getting off the bus.
Yawn.
You can feel as conflicted as you want to about the Margot character, and I opt to. But one thing that cannot be denied is that the experience of watching her descend the bus is only matched by every time I see my wife's face.
Oh my God.
That's Greg.
The fact that I could be sweet to her and upset you guys in equal measure is just really making my day over here.
But to be fair, every time you're sweet to the two of us, you upset her a lot.
Yeah,
she also gets mad. So there was one special bonus Mike Award. You perfectly lined up with what I thought, and I got to say,
Ryan.
Anytime something is directly on the nose, it's against the repetition of it's against the law while they are breaking the law was so endearing. And it's all like childhood pranks and law breaking. I think Me and Julio down by the schoolyard.
Can we stop real quick, though, because this is such a good award. Neither one of us gave it to Elliott Smith, which is, I think, the most obvious answer.
Is that Richie's Suicide?
Richie's Suicide, yeah. I think that's the
or
most
I
obvious
had
one.
the Hey Jude when Mordecai.
The instrumental "Hey Jude,"
Yeah.
and then the bird flies away, and then
Yeah.
the music blasts into effect, and then we also have
Like that trumpet, that clarion trumpet.
yeah, and then the Rolling Stones hitting it hard when Margot opens the tent and Richie is laying there.
Mm-hmm. But then we brought it up earlier. Even the Christmas Time Is Here Again by Charlie Brown, like that is
It's not by Charlie Brown.
by Charlie,
Charlie
Brown and the
character.
Peanuts.
Yeah, they sang it.
Charlie Brown, Peanuts too.
Is here. Snoopy Dog, Woodstock bird.
Wait, I'm sorry. Part of the lyrics are Snoopy died, Woodstock burned.
Snoopy.
Yep. Yes. And what is your cringe moment, Greg?
For me, it is all the racism is bad. You can quote me on that.
Bold.
But there's this
fucking brave.
this part where Royal turns to Richie and says, "What do you think of this big buck living up at the house?" And you see Richie be disgusted, but he doesn't say, "Hey, don't talk about my friend Henry that way." He just countenances it, and that's what I think might be wrong with this movie. Is not that this movie does anything so super duper racist itself.
Just let those old people be them.
It just kind of sees racism, and then it just goes like, "Oh, that's not what I'm doing because I just like to wear this clever jacket," you know.
They all do have great jackets.
They do. It's a movie about jackets.
Like
Good
Margot's
jacket
like,
game.
I'm gonna wear this polo T-shirt from the '70s, but it's a dress now, and a big fur coat. That's just how she goes about town.
I'll just wear this slip as a dress.
Ryan?
I think this one's obvious for everybody, but that's not you two. Everybody that's in the world that is not you two. Just because Margot lost one of her fingers, and that's wooden, she decides that she's going to do everything with her feet. For a solid portion of the movie, she unlocks doors, she turns off TVs, she fucking walks on her feet down the stairs. Now,
That's true.
use your hands.
See, I think you're being oblivious, Ryan. I didn't even put that together that there's a character reason she does that. I thought Wes Anderson was just like, you know what? This is for Mikey in 20
No,
years.
she's being twee, she's being cute. She touches things with her feet.
That word is ableist, right?
No, it's oblivious. I can't wait for
And I probably should have waited until we're off air, but that's ableist, right?
I can't wait for Gwyneth Paltrow's oblivious biopic.
See, I've always wondered, but like if you
Always-
the E
it's
before
ableist.
I,
No. It's just
It's ableist.
Ableist?
like
It's
the
just
word
stupid.
able
There should be a
dash
hyphen?
is.
Do you think that obliest is better? I'm an obliest?
well, I mean, if you look at the English language, that's how those two.
Do you really
vowels
think that
together would
argument
be.
works anymore?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, anyways, I think
Greg agreed with me.
I think it's ableist, Mike, and I think you should look into it. If it's ableist, will you let me know?
I will let you know. I'm sorry, I learned most words from reading because I don't interact with people.
That is
And then I
Or-
know how vowels make sounds together.
Or saying them on a podcast so two other people can fucking blast you out of the air.
Just put it right up on air.
I recommend you shut the fuck up.
Nobody won for that one. You're both dickheads. Performance.
I'll go. It's so hard not to say.
I remembered Greg's was racism. Greg won that one.
It's so hard not to say Gene Hackman, but you guys, I love Angelica Houston, and that scene where he's like, "I have cancer. No, I don't. Yes, I do." Everything she's doing in that, and again, in part it's because it's on the heels of having seen The Piano Teacher, but like that, she's doing really good work in that scene, and she has to do all these different things in one shot. And I was just really impressed with that. Like the way she hits him, the way she yells at him, the way she says, "Well, which one is it?" The way she says, the first thing she says when he says, "I have cancer," she says, "Where is the doctor?" Which is just the kind of stupid thing you say in grief that doesn't make any sense because you're a stupid person and you can't really understand bad things when they happen to you.
Suck at grieving people.
It's just, no, it is, right? Like when something really bad happens to you, you start having the weirdest thoughts. Like, "Oh, I'll just tell myself to look out for this." What does that mean?
Yeah.
It's already happened. So, Angelica Houston was my answer.
Ryan.
I'm not. I don't have that sort of like fortitude to not say Gene Hackman. The script,
get it right.
the script was written around him. Like he wrote it, and I did read today that if he said no, which he initially did, then it was going to go to Michael Caine, and then to Gene Wilder.
I want
shit.
both of those cuts.
I want
I want
three
all
Royal
three to
Tenenbaums.
exist.
Everybody
Everybody else the same.
Drop the Mike O'Kane cut. We demand it.
drop the
HBO
mic.
Max. Check it out. We want the Wilder cut.
Yeah, where's
Van
the internet
Wilder.
on that? We want more fucking what's his name? Zack Snyder movies and not more Wes Anderson, Michael Caine, or Gene. Well, Gene Wilder would be.
It'd be a
I mean,
feat.
that'd be grim.
CGI.
Weekend
It'd
at
be a little
Bernie's.
Weekend at Tenenbaums.
But no, it's Gene Wilder, and it's because of his delivery of lines like I've said. I finally want to meet my grandchildren, and it's in the ice cream thing where Margot doesn't order, and he's trying to be better, but nobody will let him, and they're in the right. They should not let him.
Yeah.
But she says, I have to leave in 5 minutes. And then he is not given dialogue. The camera cuts back to him, and he just looks sad. And we have this thing where we have to, like, even though the generation above us is terribly racist and just awful, just has no empathy for anyone, we do feel bad for them. And I think Gene Hackman kills it.
I love the part where he says, where Chaz is like, why should I forgive you? And Royal's like, because you're hurting me.
Yeah.
It's affecting me right now.
Yeah, stop being mad at me. It's hurting my feelings.
But
Christ.
That's white people, dude. That is white people for sure. Stop being
And
mad
old
at us.
people.
It's hurting our feelings.
the
And
fact
men
that
people.
the reason that they talked to Michael Caine and Gene Wilder was because Gene Hackman was like, I have nothing. I do not understand this person, which I think makes it more like it makes it better, right? Like I don't want somebody who like dives into the role in that way of like ha ha ha. Like not I don't want Tim Allen
this guy.
as Royal Tenenbaums.
Yeah. If the core, not his real core not being there means there is a sweetness that can come through, and that he is a lad and cad instead of just like an unforgivable prick.
And I think this is probably forgetting that movie like Welcome to Winnetka or whatever with Roy Romano. This is probably going to be the movie that we remember Gene Hackman as his last movie.
It's Mooseport, you dickhead.
Welcome to Mooseport. Sorry. I think it's Gene Hackman.
Remember Welcome to Mooseport, or you get docked a point. I think Gene
That has
Hackman
long been the
is
policy of this show.
phenomenal in this, but maybe it's just too up my alley. But and thinking about pound for pound, I think Houston does less showy things that it Crush, and so gets the real point there as well.
Cool.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. I'm loving it.
Director's signature moment, Ryan.
I'm just going to say the time where I was watching the movie and I turned it off and then I farted a lot. I didn't even watch the movie. How about that shit? But if I had to come up with a second thing, it would be I think it's the house. I think the house sort of sets up, as I talked about before, everything that will become Wes Anderson. You know, I agree with
What do
you,
you mean
Mike.
by the house? Like the establishing shot of it, or when we first go through it, or what do you mean? All of it?
Yeah, I guess I paused accidentally instead of explaining it, so I guess now I'll fucking explain it. I love Rushmore, like you said in your intro, Mike, that it is the best movie of all time, but this was the movie where we clearly found out his obsession, like his addiction to the background, where people are. If you look, don't just look at the character and what they're saying, but look around them, and that will give you everything you need to know about the character. I think it all comes from this fucking house that is so fictional. You know, like, there's no way that this house could exist. There's no way that it could have this many rooms or floors or anything.
It's clearly on like the Universal lot.
Right.
It's like the fakest looking little New York lit.
But like he could, like the way that he designed it, it means that he could pull a room out of nowhere and just now this is Chaz's room.
I
And
like
also,
the idea,
this is
Ryan, that you
Chaz's
said
third
that they
room.
like kind of almost just like a pier. Like it's not like there's like a fixed floor plan. It's like they're all rooms of necessity from Harry Potter or
Magically,
something.
yeah.
There's no way that there
Yes.
could be. Yeah, like I think Harry Potter is a good example of just like, oh, I need a new room right now.
Yeah,
and then
stairs
from out
just,
of
like,
the door,
kinda
it's like, yeah.
Well, because this is like in a pretend street, and then the Y Gene Hackman ends up living in is 357th Street, and guys who haven't lived or been to New York, that's not a real street. They don't go up that high. This is all in a magical part of New York.
Honestly, bringing up New York is crazy because it seems like he had like he had this like Scorsese New York in mind, or like this Bomback Woody Allen New York in mind, and we just don't get that. We get some fucking weird version of a city that doesn't exist.
It's
He
like
doesn't-
the
he doesn't want
Magicians.
any of this to exist.
It's like the Magicians or something. It's like this like little corner Harry Potter that exists magically somehow inside New York.
Which looks like something we recognize, but it isn't.
Yeah.
You know?
For me, and I know I've been harping on the two-dimensionality of the movie, but that last kind of shot of like down the street, all the way down the fire engine, and then like the moving and pausing, and each little like vignette has like a character saying something about what has happened, or like helping to summarize what's going on, or like what's next for these guys, and stopping at like each place and moving up levels, and now you're sitting on the fire engine, now you're standing in front of it talking to a paramedic or something. It's just so like painfully composed, but not necessarily like a negative way. It's like very of the moment, like very like kitschy within the moment of the movie, and it feels like departing this magical land, like Ryan was saying. It's like you feel like the mist's kind of closing behind you as the movie comes to a conclusion. So that last like fire truck scene.
I think both of those are phenomenal answers, but I feel like I can remember in all of his movies post this a geographical area that has that magical feel. The Japan of I Love Dogs is not the Japan of real reality.
Japan.
So apparently that accidentally went to me. Is where it actually should go. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we will find out how you both feel. This will go on in the bracket. And who wins Best Friend of the Week?
Mm-hmm.
Taste buds, that is the Royal Tenenbaums show.
That's
better than what's that World War II movie from '85? Come See Me.
Come see me.
Come
and see me, maybe.
Don't you see me, baby?
Royal Tenenbaums was better than that. Like there was no World War II in Come and See.
So the more World War II, the less you think a movie's good.
That's my philosophy.
How do we feel this is going to do in the bracket?
I think it's got a real puncher's chance because it feels like the kind of movie that we all have like up in our top 3. And maybe none of us has it as number 1 at the end of it, but we all have it highly ranked. And so then if we disagree about what number 1 is, then I think that it could slip in. Yeah, I think it could.
Yeah, last week's movie was a tough one. Like, that's going to be tough for anybody. And then, Mike, at the end of this show, you're going to say next week's movie. And that one's a tough one. So, yeah, I sort of agree that this might shoot past both of those. There's a chance. I'm not saying it's a good one, but there's a chance.
We have, like, 2 really, like, feel good, but then still, like, dramatic and important movies. Like, The Spirited Away and Royal Tenenbaums are both good movies. At the same time, they feel really good to watch them. And I wonder how that's gonna serve them, because
especially the year we're recording.
Piano Teacher is really tough, Ryan. Yeah, Mulholland Drive is really tough, and it's like, Fellowship of the Ring is not really actually being considered. So like,
I forgot we did that show.
Yeah, that one might be out. I'm on record saying that like I really don't give a fuck if you want to watch the movie again. Like I don't think that has any bearing on whether it's good or not. And I think that doing the podcast makes that even more so. You don't have to watch it again, right? Like we don't have to watch.
We did it. This was the quintessential watch.
Yeah, we don't have to watch the Piano Teacher or Mulholland Drive or whatever ever again. But Royal Tenenbaums is so hard to look at, like not fondly, you know, like that the heart that it, or the fire that it builds in your heart, I think is very important.
Did watching it this time for the show change your opinion positively or negatively than it had been before?
This movie's never gone down before. I've only watched this and had its stock rise.
I feel like there is something about the movie that makes me feel a little uncomfortable because it's because of the way it's such a fantasy, and I don't know why. Like I don't know if I don't say that's totally valid. It just makes me feel a little uncomfortable. But like judging it for this show, it kind of like just confirmed what I naturally felt about the movie. Then when I would like study why I felt that way, I felt like it always confirmed. And so like I think that honestly, like the movie, you don't have to like actually get into granular detail for why this movie is good. You just can experience it. But then it also exists on that level where you can really get in deep.
Yeah, and I guess for this show, I'm trying to deal with like what the auteur theory means to me and if it's important. And this movie, I think that Wes Anderson is so important to me because he's not only somebody who taught me about it, but like also why it's important. And you could just see in everything he does that like whether he means it or not, it's the most Wes Anderson-y thing that you could ever do. And I do think that is important. You know, I do think that, like, he doesn't mean to make all of these shots look so weird and all of these characters talk so weird. It just is what's going to happen. And I find that inherently interesting.
He has such a strong Wes Anderson DNA.
Yeah.
And thumbprint that even if he's like, I'm going to make a normal movie now, he makes a movie and then looks at it.
Can I do that?
And it's just Wes Anderson.
I think when we boil down the auteur theory is that, what it comes down to is not, like, are you good or not? It's just, you can't not. You can't fucking help yourself. Like,
look, I'm trying.
If Herzog and Wes Anderson traded scripts, they would just be Herzog or Anderson movies, you know?
Interesting. We will see in a few weeks how Royal Tenenbaums does. But now, the most important part of the evening that everybody's been waiting for. Who will be my best friend and deliver me fresh, baked blueberry muffins every day for the next week, among other tasks? I feel like this was a good showing by everybody involved. I do not have the host count in front of me, but I feel like I got 6 points, and that's pretty impressive.
I thought you did well.
Thank you. And I will give you no points. The points are closed, but I'll remember that for later, Greg. Ryan?
Uh-huh.
This is one of your favorite movies.
It is.
And this means a lot to you.
It does.
And that's why I'm proud to say you did get 38 points.
Uh-huh.
And that's pretty good.
Yes.
Pretty good.
That's a solid performance. And Greg, my best friend from last week. You came in here, you did it again.
I did it.
You're really good. You're really strong. You got 35 points. It was a very close showing, but Ryan did take this one by the hair off of Gene Hackman's ass.
I don't mean to speak for Greg, but nobody likes the way that you deliver information. Like, I feel like you could have just said that straight up, just said names and numbers.
See, Wes Anderson's going to Anderson. I was trying to deliver that in the
I thought you did.
cleanest,
I thought you did great.
most forefront Care Bear stare possible.
It was very painful to me personally, and I assumed that was your goal, so I think you did a great job.
It was not.
Oh, okay.
I thought I was trying to be nice to everyone, so I mic'd it up.
Also, the cool thing about Greg is like, oh, that's painful? Must be good. Must be art. That's probably art.
This is probably right.
Art should hurt, and I made you hurt. I'm art incarnate.
God made art, and art don't fart.
That's true. I've never seen Yeah, he didn't paint a can of beans.
Our host, ladies and gentlemen.
That white-haired artist from Pittsburgh didn't paint no can of beans.
A can of beans, right?
Oh, one more fun fact, by the way, because we're probably not going to talk about Royal Tenenbaums ever again. Mordecai flew away. Somebody found Mordecai, held it for ransom. They said, "Go fuck yourself." They found a different hawk. And then it was more white, like it had more white feathers, and then they just wrote that into the movie and then said, "Fuck that guy."
Just talked about trauma and made it thematically linked.
Maybe this isn't Mordecai.
Hey, listeners, if anybody ever holds your baby for ransom, have another baby. That's all you have to do.
They're a dime a dozen. That is our show. Ryan and I will be best friends, and I can't wait for that this week.
Fuck you.
Ouch. That makes me wish Greg had won.
Me too.
Next week, we will be watching Mulholland Drive, which I think is one of those fun movies to watch they were talking about earlier. Until then, keep watching those movies.